Well, good evening, everyone, and welcome to the Tuesday, March 17, 2015 meeting of the Edina City Council and the Edina Housing and Redevelopment Authority. Roll call, please, Ms. Benarott. Member
Staunton.
Here.
Member Stewart.
Here.
Member Swenson.
Here.
Member Brindle.
Here.
Mayor Hovland.
Here. We have in front of us this evening a form of meeting agenda. Is there a motion to approve the form of meeting agenda?
So moved.
Second.
Got a motion and a second to approve the form of meeting agenda. Any further discussion? All those in favor of adopting the agenda as shown, say aye.
Aye.
Opposed, say nay. Carried. Before we go to the consent agenda, I just want to note that this evening we have quite a few students here from Valley View. And this is your 10 seconds of fame. If you all want to stand up, if you're from Valley View, we'll tell the camera crew in the back to
oh, excellent.
Scan the crowd. And if some of your friends told their parents they're here and they aren't, well, all right, good. Thanks, everybody, and welcome to your Edina City Council meeting. All right, we've got a consent agenda, quite a few items. Is there any item on the consent agenda that anyone on the council wishes to remove from the consent agenda?
Item 4C.
Yeah, I think Member Staunton, you had the same request, 4C.
Right.
All right.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor.
I'll move the balance of the consent agenda.
Second.
All right, we've got a motion and a second to approve the consent agenda with the exception of 4C. Any further discussion? All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Aye. Opposed say nay. Carried. And as to 4C, which is a proposed amending of the 2014 budget, Member Stewart first.
I just wanted to pull this off the consent agenda. This is an important issue for us and for our budget here in Edina. The result of less than projected net profits from our liquor enterprise results in us needing to amend the budget and reduce the amount of funds that we're transferring into the general fund. And Manager Neal, I think you had prepared some statements on that.
I do. Thank you, Councilmember Stewart.
Incidentally, happy St. Patrick's Day to you.
Thank you very much. It's a big day. So we'll talk about liquor, I guess, right? You know, a couple of things that I'll tell you about our liquor operations that are important to know. First of all, the budget that we are working within that was established for 2014 and 2015 was a budget that was approved by the City Council in December of 2013, which means that most of the data that we used to develop that budget was developed earlier in the year in 2013. At that point, our market did not include a major new competitor, which is Total Wine, and I won't say that name anymore. But they have made an enormous impact on our revenues. And when I say enormous, what we've seen is a 4% decrease in our revenues. But that 4% over the many millions of dollars that we take in on an annual basis is something that's notable to us, and we see the impact of it this year. We are fortunate in Edina compared to other communities where they're suffering the same kind of new competitive force that we have a source of revenue to make up for that, and that's that we had a record year in our building permits area. We topped $4 million in our building permits in 2014. And that money is going to be able to sustain our general fund so that we don't have to do any operational decreases or other revenue increases to cover that. But one of the things I wanted to tell you is that when we began to get a sense that yes, Total Wine was going to join this market, we had a sense of knowing where they were in other parts of the country. We wanted to prepare for them. So we did some preparation for them by bringing in some retail consultant to do some market analysis for us, to develop some strategies for retailing for us. We implemented a new guest customer service model. We trained all our staff. We did on that model. We did mystery shops in our own stores and did report cards back, so we knew kind of where we were strong and where we were weak. We hired a new advertising agency to develop new marketing plans. That's where the concept of we pour our profits back into the community comes from. We remodeled our Grandview store. We did store signage and awning replacements to improve the view, and we did a full remodel of our 50th store, which caused it to be closed for 6 weeks, and that also made a hit to our bottom line. What we're doing, that's what we did in anticipation of the Total Wine market entry. What we're doing now is we're increasing the ability of our POS system, our point of sale system, to do analytics. That's going to allow us to develop more information about our customer base and how to reach our customers from a marketing standpoint. We're increasing our marketing presence on Facebook and Twitter. We're developing a loyalty program that's also going to be supported through our POS. But probably the biggest impact is we're changing our margins. We're having to compete with a new competitor, and we're decreasing our margins on most of our products. And that's going to have an impact, we believe, on sales, but it also has an impact on our profitability as well. I think the important thing that I would be remiss if I didn't say is that we still will have more than $1 million in profit in our liquor operations. So it is not an operation, as you see in some very small communities, that loses money. This is an operation that makes money. That money is taken from the liquor store operations and put back into our recreation enterprises. So it goes to support our ice arena, Edinburgh Park, our golf courses, our art center primarily, those recreation facilities that we don't require to make up all of their own revenues. So that's just a little bit about that. We're going to keep really a very close eye on it this year as we start to see the impact settle out of Total Wine in 2015. We think that we'll get to a more stable market at the end of the year.
Other comments or questions for Manager Neal? I think it might be important, Manager Neal, to indicate that while this resolution that was pulled from the consent agenda anticipates the canceling of a planned transfer of cash from the liquor fund to the general fund in the amount of about $765,000, there still are some budgeted cash transfers that are significant. I think it would be worthwhile naming those, that if this resolution passes, there will still be transfers totaling over $1 million to various funds, and I think you should name the funds and name the amount.
Thank you, Your Honor. It does. I think that amount is $1,035,000. That's the net profit that from our liquor operations that we are spreading into a number of different funds. The first one of those funds is the construction fund, and the construction fund is how we fund a large variety of small and large capital projects, improvements to buildings and parks and vehicles, et cetera. $150,000 into that fund. $485,000 is transferred into our golf fund, and that goes to help support the financial operations of our golfing operation at Braemar. $200,000 into our arena fund to help support the financial operations at the ice arena, and $200,000 into our art center fund. So in all of those cases, because we're able to transfer money from our liquor fund into those other funds, we can allow access, and we can allow pricing options at those facilities that are really advantageous to the users. The users aren't required to support all of the cost of the golf or all of the cost of the ice arena. And that's important because it allows us to decrease the prices that we have to charge there.
All right. Good. Thank you. Member Stoughton.
Just a couple of follow-up points. Thanks for the clarification on that. I do think this is a good thing to be talking about. This is a relatively unique function that we perform, and we are fortunate to benefit from, as you say, over $1 million a year coming in to help pay for things that benefit our residents and our community. But it also makes it a unique operation to manage, and so I appreciate you kind of sharing the thoughts on a little bit of a diagnosis about why this has happened, and I think it's important for us to pause and reflect on it. One notion that, from what you described, that occurs to me is if we're budgeting 2 years in advance, maybe that's something we need to think about in the future in this particular operation where things can change more quickly than they might in other operations we're budgeting for, both on the revenue side and on the expense side. And my sense from your description is that part of the over-budget expenses was really seeing this trend coming and trying to react to it, and I think that's entirely appropriate. but it may be a lesson for us in the future, and I hope we'll just kind of keep this conversation going as we get to the middle of the year when the audited results come in, and as you and the staff work on trying to kind of proactively develop a strategy for positioning us.
I think what we saw for a number of years in our liquor operations was that we just always made 2 or 3% more every year, year after year after year. It was really a fairly stable environment. Not that it was just it had a very manageable level of growth to it. But a new competitor changed that for us this year, and we didn't see that coming in 2013, but we definitely saw it coming in 2014. So we were able to do some prep for it, but we are seeing the impacts of it, and we need to compete, and we will.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. Thank you, Mr. Manager.
Having had that discussion, I will move the
Resolution
Resolution,
2015-12. Thank you. Is there a second?
Second.
Any further discussion? All those in favor of the resolution say aye.
Aye.
Opposed say nay. Carried. Other thing I think it would be good for folks to think about when they're making their decisions on where to buy is that as we work on the budget year in, year out, it seems to me that every $300,000 of budget equals about a 1% general tax levy. So by being able to generate $1 million in net revenue off of liquor stores, that's a 3% savings on the general levy. So it's significant, and so I would encourage folks to continue to shop at home. Pricing is good over at our stores, and I think in many situations very, very competitive with some of the new private market people or companies. Thank you. We're going to move on now to the special recognitions and presentations portion of the agenda, and our Jordan Gilgenbach has this first matter, which is his periodic Speak Up Edina report, which this month is going to talk about the feedback he got on drive-thrus in Edina. Jordan, welcome.
Thank you, Mayor Hovland and City Council members. Like the Mayor mentioned, my name is Jordan Gilgenbach, Communications Coordinator for the City of Edina here. And I'm here, like the Mayor said, to present on Speak Up Edina's February topic, which is on drive-thrus. A little bit of a quick background here. We've been doing monthly discussions on speakupedina.org for the last almost year and a half now, ranging from topics from beekeeping to food to liquor sales ratios, garbage hauling, etc. And this was just another one that we've done this month, or this last month. In the discussion, we asked what residents would think about prohibiting new drive-thrus and what their general opinions about drive-thrus are, what types of businesses they think work best with drive-thrus, and if they have any concerns over any environmental or health concerns regarding idling cars in drive-thrus. The discussion was open for a little over a month. We got just over 30 comments, 760 visitors, a little over 1,000 total visits, and just shy of 4,000 total page views. As you can see here, we had a little bit more outside of Edina interest than usual. Most of our comments usually from residents inside the city. We did have one from Richfield. It looks like Egan and Minneapolis for this one. We got a myriad of comments. Some people were in support of prohibiting future drive-thrus. Some of them were in favor of allowing them under certain circumstances, and some of them frankly don't really care either way. Many people cited the convenience factor of drive-thrus, especially with those with small children and with our very cold temperatures as we've seen in the last month, I guess, not recently. One thing to note that they did mention, generally banks, pharmacies, and drive-thrus, they believe that those work well with drive-thrus. And that one person commented that Richfield is encouraging its businesses to allow bicycles in its drive-thrus to serve that extra market, especially since some drive-thrus are open later than the actual walk-in traffic. And then one other comment also noted on the idling and the environmental concern that sometimes idling at stoplights, especially left turn lights, can be longer than times that they've had to wait in drive-thrus. With that also, and all of these comments are also available in your packets and on our website, so those can be reviewed at any time. With that, if you have any questions on this topic, I will take those.
Yeah. Questions for Jordan on the topic?
Currently, what do you have up?
Speak up, Edina.
Currently, we are doing street lighting. What residents think about our current level of street lighting, the type of lighting that we've got around town, and general opinions about that.
Member Staunton, you had a question, I believe.
Yeah, Jordan, thanks for your work on this tonight as well as in general. I think this is a great tool to be gauging kind of community temperature and feedback. So when we get our packets, you do a nice job of compiling all of the different comments and basically giving us a complete transcript of everything that's been done. But I've really enjoyed your presentations here at the council that kind of distill that down into some summaries, and I know in the past some pie charts and things like that. And to the extent you could, the extent that's available prior to our meetings, I would love to see that. And I bet members of the public would enjoy seeing it on the website too, because your analysis, I think, is a really helpful part of this whole piece. And so if we can do that, that would be terrific.
Great, thank you.
Good. Thank you.
My only other question is, I don't think we prohibit bikes from drive-throughs from any ordinances that I've ever read. Have you?
It isn't prohibited by ordinance that I'm aware of, but some of the restaurants prohibit it.
Okay. Thank you.
Thank you.
Good. Thanks, Jordan. All right, and then, of course, we have a revised agenda in front of us this evening, and the next presentation we're going to have is a Pentagon Park redevelopment update. We've got Scott Tankenoff from Hillcrest with us this evening, and we know the tall building is down and ready for a prospective tenant. And welcome, Mr. Tankenoff. These periodic updates are important, I think, for the council and for the community.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor and members of the City Council. My name is Scott Tankenoff. I'm the managing partner of Hillcrest Development. So what I'd like to do is start with a very brief video of what happened with the demolition of the tower. But before the demolition of the tower, we had quite a bit of training that took place at the building itself. So you'll see some before and after. There'll be some before pictures before demolition here. And then we're going to get into, I think, what is the most interesting part, which was the fire department training that took place at the building kind of in the middle of demolition. So it was after we'd demolished quite a number of the interior walls, many of which you still see here. And here we go with the training.
Scott, do you want to say a word or two about the fact that you kind of just took this building down, you took it apart as you took it down. It's not, I think people, when they see this demo, they just think of it as a big pile of rubble and it all goes to the landfill, but that's not even close to what happened in this case.
Yeah, I'm going to touch on that in just a moment.
I think when we were out there for the start of demo days, we were told that you had discovered that the foundation on this on the 6-story building, 7-story building was really substantial. It stabilized the soils in another era they decided to stabilize it with concrete. And so must have
It
been
was a
quite
little
challenge.
stronger than what we had anticipated. We found a little bit more concrete than we had anticipated, but again, the way we looked at this building, there was a thought of maybe, maybe we could implode this, maybe we could take it down, maybe we could have a contest for somebody in Edina to be the lucky person to push the button, but for a variety of reasons, we couldn't implode this building. And that actually worked out quite well from a training standpoint for not only the Edina Fire Department, but for quite a number of other local fire departments that were then able to go and train inside of the building, which was really kind of an irresistible opportunity for them, as well as it was, candidly, for the other communities. You don't find a multiple-story training opportunity in the suburbs, hardly at all, and their training at the current structure out at Braemar is just nothing in comparison with what they were able to do here. So it was a neat opportunity, but it did come apart a little bit differently than what we had initially had thought. So.
Your Honor,
Yes,
the only thing I would add to what Mr. Tankinoff just said is that there are other buildings where firefighters can train, but it's the property owner that's the unique part in this case, because Mr. Tankinoff was willing to work with us and to be patient while things were set up and while the building was being used for that purpose. And it's not without any liability when you let people burn things down and go in and train on this kind of a operation. So it was really a great opportunity for us and, as he said, other fire departments in our neighborhood here in the metro.
Thank you for those comments.
It came together well. So I'm going to also go through a very brief PowerPoint, which many of you have seen before, as well as the community has seen before. There's a few additional slides that are here that have not been seen. Again, part of what we did was we went through Pentagon Park and we repositioned approximately 5 structures that were there and renovated them for existing office use. Oh, awesome. Thank you. That looks better. So we have some aerial photographs of what the area looks like. Again, just to refamiliarize ourselves with where we're located. A number of before pictures. And then many of these pictures are going to focus on buildings that we actually renovated that have clients in them now. So the space looks a little bit different than before. So I'm going to go through these fairly rapidly. We have some additional pictures of what the Richards property, what the city passed back on the 21st of October of 2014 in with this PowerPoint. And then we come to a slide that has 6 general principles that came through intake with the City Council, starting back in April of 2013 and then concluding in March of 2014 when the preliminary PUD was passed. And all these principles remain the same and are planned to be integrated into the new development, which we're in the process of working on now, and I want to touch on in just a moment. So again, these are all slides and all pieces and parts that have been there in past presentations. And then we skip to the final aerial photographs of the site. So what I'd like to touch on tonight is we've been before you several times before, and a couple of comments that have been made before I just want to reiterate. At Pentagon Park, with the redevelopment of the property, we will not be shedding additional stormwater onto any neighboring property. We've made that commitment. That commitment is the same as it was back at the beginning of time for us. We also are not going to bring automobile traffic of any kind through the neighborhood to the north. That was something that was very important to our neighbors to the north. It remains as important today. It's a commitment that we made back in 2012. We stand by that commitment as well in 2015 and beyond. That stays intact, of course. In regards to demolition of the former South Tower building, we made a commitment to track those demolition activities and to try to figure out what was going into a landfill and maybe what was going to be recycled and saved on site or recycled in general. So I've got some feedback on that in just a moment, but one thing that we did was we built a website, and we felt with staff this was a really important and a very good tool Because a lot of times people just want to know what's going on, and they want to be able to have a good source to get for information, whether to see data or pictures or just raise a question. So part of what we did was we actually built a website, made it interactive, and broadcast it out into the general community, and it's also on the fence at Pentagon Park in several locations. So if people drive up to the site and have a question, they actually can take that website information down, and they can email questions back and forth, and they can look at data that's taking place on the site. So to that extent, that remains important, and it has emergency contact information and a variety of past and upcoming events that are on it. It also has videos on it, pictures, and a variety of things of that nature. And I would also encourage people to still visit that site, which is www.pentagon-redevelopment.com. And there will continue to be information on that site. We're going to continue to update that site as we proceed with the redevelopment. And I think that's an important way for people to get questions answered. And we've had only a small handful of questions, but we've been able to get back to all the people that have requested information. The second important item that we did work on, though, with this was tracking the recycling and the waste streams. And recycled materials, including crushed concrete that remains at site for reuse in the new construction that'll take place, also including scrap metal, miscellaneous salvage materials, asphalt, and trees and brush, were a little over 82% of the total weight of the project at the site. So that in tons, that equates to over 21,500 tons is recyclable and stays either on site or was recycled off site, like scrap metal was taken off site and recycled, which really leaves approximately 4,700 tons, or under 18%, that went into a landfill, which is right at the numbers that we targeted. Candidly, I think we can do a little bit better next time because, while we don't demolish buildings that much, we have some ideas of how to make those numbers stronger. But it was important, and I think for the council it was important, but also for us, that we track what is going into a landfill, what's being recycled, and how can we do better. How can we actually make this as green and appropriate of a site as humanly possible? Not included in those numbers were asbestos-containing materials. Those materials are always taken off-site and properly disposed of in a landfill. So, again, we're happy with those numbers, but not satisfied. And then what I want to touch on in just a moment, or right now, is we are going to be kicking off our marketing of the South Tower property. The Cushman and Wakefield Company is going to be working on that marketing effort, and they're already in discussions with multiple users that have a variety of different interests for the site, and those interests include hotel developments, as well as a number of other parties that are interested in medical, in office, and in office medical. So we know there are people that are going to be interested. We want to find the right uses and the right combination of uses for the site. But it is exciting, and I think we're going to have some nice updates for you as 2015 moves along. I also have an additional update that we'll be providing to the Planning Commission on the 22nd of April as we go back and engage with them. There's a lot of new Planning Commission members, so I think that particular update might be maybe not a work session. It depends on how staff wants to set that up, but it'll be where it's maybe more informative, where they get a little bit more of a what were we doing at a more technical level as well. But we'll be back in before you as time goes along here, and hopefully be able to answer any questions as time does go along. But if there's anything I can answer for you tonight, happy to do it.
Questions for Mr. Tankinoff from anyone? For those of you in the audience, we get these updates on the Pentagon Park project from time to time, and it's very helpful for the council and I think for the community at large. So we thank you for that.
Just encouraging you to move right along. The thought that it's going to take 20 years is just amazing to me, knowing how old I'm going to be then. So I would love to see it move along. But it's very exciting. Thank you for doing this.
Thank you. We are moving things along more quickly than that.
Excellent.
Much more quickly.
Excellent.
All right. Good.
Thank you very much.
Yeah,
Thank you, Mr. Tankinoff. We're going to move into the next portion of the agenda, which is public hearings. We have two matters in the public hearing portion of the agenda this evening. One is a request for a postponement to continue a public hearing to April 21st, 2015. Director Teague, do you have any comment on this particular matter? It's a preliminary plat over at Blake Woods.
Yeah, this is still in front of the Planning Commission. They've not taken final action. We did hold one public hearing back in February, but there's a lot of questions in regard to grading and drainage. Right now, the applicant is working on some revised plans. So the public hearing has been continued at the Planning Commission to the March 25th meeting. That's assuming we receive new plans from the applicant that are anticipated in the next day or two. So we're suggesting that the council continue this to your April 21st meeting. That would still allow the Planning Commission 2 meetings to review and make a recommendation to the City Council.
Anyone have questions
And
for
does
Director
this
Member
follow a
Swenson?
normal 120-day or rule so that we have to be cognizant of that?
We do, and
So where are we on that?
we are at about we're getting close to the 60-day mark. We've extended the 60-day period. By state law, we have 60 days to take action. If the city has not taken action in the first 60 days, we have the ability to extend 60 days. We've done that. So we're right, maybe just a hair over the 60-day mark. So
we have to make a decision by mid-May, or it automatically their request is accepted.
That's correct.
Okay.
Good. Other questions for Director Teague? Member Swenson, any more follow-up?
Well, I just wanted to make sure we had one more council meeting after April 21st, so before we hit that deadline. So it sounds like we do. So I will, if no one else wants to, I will make a motion to continue the public hearing to April 21st.
Second.
I got a motion and a second to continue the public hearing to April 21st regarding the preliminary plat for Blake Woods, 5321 and 5331 Evanswood Lane, and 5320 and 5324 Blake Road. Any further discussion? All those in favor of the motion as stated, say aye.
Aye.
Aye. Opposed, say nay. Carried. One other public hearing matter in front of us this evening in this portion of the agenda, and that is the appeal of the utility shutoff involving Waldorf Nevins, and our Finance Director, Eric Rogeman, has this matter. Director Rogeman, welcome.
Thank you, Mayor, members of the City Council. The business located at 7075-7079 Amundsen Avenue, Waldorf Nevins, filed for Chapter 11 bankruptcy on January 9th, 2015. This business is a large user and purchaser of city utility services. So the bankruptcy filing required the city to respond in 2 different ways. First, there was an outstanding balance on the account that entered the jurisdiction of the bankruptcy court. The city has filed a secured claim for this balance, but the disposition of that claim will be decided by the bankruptcy court. There's nothing more the city can do for this claim right now, and the city attorney's office has advised staff that the pre-bankruptcy account status is not relevant to tonight's discussion. The issue for the City Council to consider tonight at the public hearing is the city's desire to secure adequate assurance that the debtor will continue to pay for the city for usage while the bankruptcy case proceeds. To that goal, city staff and the debtor have negotiated a proposed agreement that was included in the council packet. According to the agreement, the city will receive cash payments for utility services as water is delivered to the business, rather than the typical 90 to 120 days after use, as normally happens when a customer's meter is read at the end of a quarter. A bill is sent out and they have 30 days to pay that bill. Under the proposed agreement, if the debtor misses a scheduled payment, city staff will be able to shut the water off within 7 days. The debtor waives the right to future hearings such as this one. So if the council approves the proposed agreement, it will be filed in bankruptcy court for the judge's approval. The hearing is currently scheduled for April 2nd. In your packet, I had stated the date is March 18th, but got notice today that that had been moved back. So with that, that's all the proposed comments I had. If the City Council has questions, Stephen Nosek, attorney at law, is here to represent the debtor, and I can answer any questions you have about the city.
Member Swenson.
Eric, am I to understand that they're going to pay at the end of a month's usage or at the beginning before the usage?
So generally speaking, payments are going to be due on the 15th of the month for that month's usage.
So in the middle of the month?
Right.
Okay, and if they don't pay on the 15th, we have 7 days to wait before we can shut off the water. So they can use water basically for 3 weeks, and
Correct.
then we shut it off.
Correct.
Is that okay?
Member Stewart?
Yeah, I just, I had a number of questions that I had sent by email, and Eric, you and other members of the staff contributed answers. I just want to thank you for the thorough answers, for the preparedness, and I thought you guys did a great job. I just want to note that the normal billing cycle for water is every 90 days. It's a quarterly billing.
Right.
So this is more frequent than our normal billing practices. And so I think it does a reasonable job of protecting the city from any further downside. So thank you.
Member Brindle?
I have just a couple, I guess, technical things. The very last paragraph of the report, the very last sentence says, if the city council approves the proposed stipulation for adequate assurance of payment, we will also be asking the bankruptcy judge to approve the same stipulation on Wednesday. What if the judge doesn't approve it? What happens? I mean, does that ever happen? Or is this because it's something they owe and because it's a utility and they'll pay it one way or another, that the judge would back it? I have no idea how to interpret that.
That's a really good question. I think we're expecting the bankruptcy judge to accept it. I don't know if any of the attorneys have any further guidance on what would happen if they don't.
The debtor's attorney may.
If I may, I have some knowledge in this area. It would be very unusual for the court to deny the application of a negotiated agreement such as this. It'd be extraordinary in my experience for the judge to deny it. Now, if they did deny it, and it's certainly the court's prerogative to do whatever they choose to do. In some ways, chaos ensues. So there are strong incentives for everybody to see this through.
Well, I guess the reason for my question is, should we have a backup plan of what we would do if, in fact, the judge doesn't support this?
This could be a conditional agreement, conditioned on the judge approving it.
Well, I understand it is conditioned on the judge approving it, isn't it?
No, well, it is in the legal sense, but this agreement isn't conditioned on the judge approving it. This is just an agreement with the debtor. So you could make this agreement with the debtor conditioned on the bankruptcy court approving the conditional deal. Then the condition would be satisfied and the agreement would go into effect.
Well, you're an attorney and you're an attorney, so if you say that, then I'll take that. But that's I just read it as kind of a one-sided scale and wanted to find out if we balance the scale, what would it look like?
Now, having said that, I tell you that things function. It's a different world in bankruptcy court. I don't know, Soren, do you have any thoughts on this? Soren? Any thoughts that are different from what we've expressed?
Thank you, Mayor. As was pointed out by the council member, I think it would be quite extraordinary for the judge not to approve it. The chances of that happening are fairly remote. If the judge did fail to approve it, then it's of no effect, and we'd be left to negotiate a new agreement or to consider termination if we feel that there isn't adequate assurance of future payment.
Okay.
I don't
Fair
have
enough.
any interest in negotiating a new agreement, so I think then the addition of that line that you suggested would be something I would be more comfortable with. This is a situation we've gone back and forth in over the years, but haven't hit bankruptcy. We've just hit non-payment. And so bankruptcy changes, for me, the landscape considerably.
Mm-hmm.
Give me a moment here.
Yeah, I have one more question.
Go ahead, Member Brindle, ask your next question.
I noticed in the payment schedule that beginning April 15th, up until April 15th, there are some payments that are like catch-up payments, weekly payments. And so March 16th, March 23rd, March 30th. And then April 15th, there are two payments due. The final of the catch-up payments and the first of the monthly payments. I wanted to confirm that both of those are due on April 15th.
I think that's consistent with my understanding.
Okay, so
Councilmember
they
Brindle.
do slightly overlap.
Yeah, I think the goal was to get the payments current as of mid-April. Right now,
Understood.
right now, the post-bankruptcy account is paid up through January 30th, meaning February and March were trying to be negotiated by this agreement.
Okay.
And so we do have a little bit of a catch-up schedule. I'll just add that we did receive the first payment according to the schedule already on Monday, yesterday.
Okay.
But everything before the end of January, which we shouldn't take into account for this agreement, has not been paid, correct? That they are in arrears for.
That's in the hands of the bankruptcy court.
I understand. Just
So let's take Member Brindle's thought one step further. So if the court does not approve the stipulation for adequate assurance of payment, understanding that we might conditionally approve this, they still don't approve it, then where are we left?
I think what our attorney said, we're left with either with renegotiating.
Renegotiating agreement, which
That was all I heard.
possibility.
Or we can just enforce our rights as a creditor
That's what I
that
was
we already
thinking.
have.
Right.
Which is
are
to
in
turn
the-
it
which
off?
are, we're
Includes
trying to
turning off the
enforce in the
water,
bankruptcy court. And right now, they're getting water right now, or they have no water?
Getting water.
They are.
Getting water.
They need the water to remain in business.
Right.
And the business, frankly, is more valuable as a going concern, so.
How many people work at the facility? That could be an important
You
consideration
know, I
as
don't
well.
know. There are a number.
Your Honor, it varies from time to time. When we have asked that question before, we've heard the numbers 40 to 60, depending on volume going through the place.
I think, Mr. Mayor, I'm Steve
No,
Nosek.
come up.
Would you come up and identify yourself, please, for the record?
Mr. Mayor, my name is Steve Nosek. I'm an attorney for the company. It's my understanding that there are 85 to 90 part-time and full-time employees currently at the company.
All right. That's an important thing to know.
Yeah.
Thank you.
Each time that we have had this before us, when we've looked at all of the water bills that have been late, this one, I think, always except one, has been in the list with a very large amount. And it really has been the employees that has been, they've been the reason that we've been hesitant to just turn off the water. That's really been, I think, at the core of trying to be as careful with this as possible.
So the mayor has some language, and it comes under number, is it
We'd add a new number 16
16?
To
And
the
it would-
stipulation?
to the stipulation, and it would read as follows: the agreement is conditioned upon the approval by the bankruptcy court of this stipulation for adequate assurance of payment. Does that seem adequate to you, Member Stewart?
Mr. Mayor, I don't think it's appropriate for us to add language to the negotiated contract. I think it's appropriate for us to add language to the motion.
Okay.
The negotiated
agree.
contract would have to be agreed to by all parties to the contract.
It would be, yeah.
So I'll make a motion.
We can't unilaterally add language.
Well,
To-
well, I expected that it would go back to them
Oh, it's a
for
public
for
hearing, never
approval.
mind.
They've already signed it. I mean,
Yeah, they've already agreed to this contract. I think we can make our stipulation as part of the motion rather than as part of the agreement.
Is there, can I ask a question? Is there a,
Yeah,
does
member
the
Staunton.
agreement commit us to refraining from turning off the water any sooner than we would otherwise be able to?
Frankly,
Yes.
if the judge turns it down, I think it just goes away and we're back in the position we were before we negotiated this.
Why does it go away? If we
Because-
have an agreement with the party, wouldn't it,
You know,
we'd have an agreement? I'm
the
worried,
party
I don't want to
can't-
give up my
The party
right to
can't
turn off
make
the
an
water.
agreement without the approval of the court at this stage.
And it does change our ability to turn it off, because we could have turned it off yesterday.
Well, is
So
that-
it limits us for another week
Right.
Yep.
after non-payment.
Yep.
of continued water supply. So it actually enforces a week of additional water after non-payment.
True. We don't want the stipulation hanging out there as an agreement. It could otherwise affect our ability to shut the water off if the court doesn't approve this. Is that what your point is?
But, I mean, it sounds to me like we've negotiated an agreement to have an ongoing stream of payment coming, and part of the agreement has been to refrain for a little bit in shutting off the water. And it's just if we don't get the agreement approved, I don't want to refrain from shutting off the water if I don't have to. So I don't know how to accomplish that, but that's my goal, is to...
We're going to have a public hearing here in accordance with city code in a moment here, but what the staff is recommending in terms of action is that we approve the attached stipulation for adequate assurance of payment that was negotiated with the debtor. It seems to me that if we want to put a condition in there, we should be able to do it, and if they don't want to sign it, well, then we're able to shut the water off.
Or, I mean, it also sounds like if they don't live up to their side of the bargain, then we don't have to live up to our side of the bargain. Maybe that's I don't know if Mr. Nesh has a thought on that.
Mr. Nosek, would you come back up here, please? If we impose a condition in this agreement, such as I have read, is that going to be a hindrance to getting this signed by your client?
No, it won't, Mr. Mayor.
Thank you. All right, so then...
If I could just add, Mr. Mayor, one thing. The hearing, which was set for tomorrow, was a request to ask the court to set an amount of payment for adequate assurance. The city filed a pleading in opposition to that, and so the matter was ripe for determination tomorrow. Because of the closeness between tonight's council meeting and the hearing tomorrow, I continued the hearing with the consent of your council. The first available date I could get with the judge was April 2nd. I attempted to continue it to next week, but the judge is not available next week. So it is April 2nd is the first available date. As I would understand it, if the judge, and I can't imagine that he won't approve this, I'd be just shocked if he didn't, but if the judge doesn't approve it, we're back to this hearing, which would have occurred tomorrow, and the city is not losing any of its defenses or assertions by approving this subject to the courts. I mean, you're not giving anything up, is what I'm saying.
Okay. While you're here, Mr. Nosek, I noticed in paragraph 8, I don't know if you have a copy of the document in front of you, it says the debtor will pay $10,000 to the city on March 16th, 2015. Did that happen yesterday?
It did.
It did.
Okay.
Yeah.
It did.
Thank you.
And the debtor intends to continue to abide by the terms of this document up until it's, and subsequent to its approval by the court. Okay. So we don't intend
I
not
missed that comment earlier, so appreciate it.
Thank you.
All right. This is a public hearing. Is there anyone in the audience who wishes to come forward and comment on this matter? I'm opening it up for public testimony. You'll have 3 minutes if you desire to come forward and comment or inquire.
I'll move to close the public hearing.
Second.
Get a motion and a second to close the public hearing. Any further discussion on the motion to close the public hearing? All those in favor of closing the public hearing, say aye.
Aye.
Opposed, say nay. Carried. Do we have a motion with regard to this matter? Member Brindle?
I move that we approve the attached stipulation for adequate assurance of payment that was negotiated, including item number 16. The agreement is conditioned upon the approval by the bankruptcy court of this stipulation for adequate assurance of payment.
Second. Is there a second? We have a second?
Yep,
Second?
Bob did.
Okay. Any further discussion? All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Aye. Opposed, say nay. Carried. All right. That concludes the public hearing portion of the agenda. The next portion of the agenda is community comment. If there is anyone in the audience who wishes to address the council on a matter that's not otherwise on the agenda this evening, you're welcome to come forward. You'll have 3 minutes. And You'll get a green light first to start, and then when you've got 30 seconds left, you'll get a yellow light, and then you'll have to wrap up your comments at the 3-minute mark. Anyone wish to come forward? All right. We're going to move on to the reports and recommendations portion of the agenda. First matter in front of us this evening is second reading on the proposed code change involving honey beekeeping. Oh, Ms. Plunkett Latham is here. Mr. Bintner is not, I take it, our staff member?
No.
Okay. And you're, yeah.
Thank you.
And your name and address, please, when you get ready.
Diane Plunkett Latham, 7013 Comanche Court, Edina, Minnesota. I'm here to report on the apiary ordinance. At the January 20th meeting, Council asked for a written policy for the circumstances outlining when apiary registration could be revoked. The Energy and Environment Commission's Local Food Task Force presented a policy, and Manager Neal has also presented a policy. The proposals are similar in that both agree that the city manager's designee can mediate between the parties, for example, moving the apiary to a different location or constructing a flyway barrier. Both proposals agree that habitual nuisance is a basis for revocation as well. Such nuisance could include inconsistent water source, swarming, or inconvenient cleansing flight trajectory. Both proposals also agree that a medically documented allergy can serve as a basis for revocation. The only issue that we've got here is should the allergy be for honeybee stings specifically or for bee stings generally. The city manager recommends bee stings generally, and the EC and the U of M Bee Lab recommends honeybees specifically. The arguments for requiring a honeybee specifically are that we want it based on fact, not on fear, and that honeybees are hybridized for docility. They rarely sting, and if they sting, they die thereafter. There are over 400 varieties of native bees in Minnesota, none of which are immunochemically similar to honeybees, such that if you're stung by a wasp or a hornet, that does not mean that you're going to be allergic to honeybees if you happen to be allergic to those. Usually if a person is stung, it's by the more aggressive wasp or hornet. And according to the Center for Disease Control, you are more likely to perish from a lightning strike than you are from a honeybee sting. And finally, having an allergy test for a specific allergy for honeybees is safe, readily available, and covered by insurance. The arguments against requiring a documented allergy for honeybees specifically are that those stung often don't know what kind of bee stung them, and they don't want to take the time to get an allergy test. So, our recommendation is that the medical documentation be pertinent to honeybees specifically, and also Manager Neal has removed provision H, which states swelling, pain, and redness due to bee stings is not sufficient to revoke an apiary registration. And we'll ask Manager Neal in a moment here why he removed that. It might be that that's obvious because everyone who is stung is going to get redness, pain, and swelling. And so since it's obvious, why do you have to have it in the policy? Well, in speaking with Jim Shadeen, the person who enforces the policy for Eden Prairie, he indicated that people actually did come to him asking for a revocation based on nothing more than swelling, pain, and redness. And then once he explained what life-threatening anaphylactic shock was, which is what we intend here for a revocation basis, then they did not appeal because they realized that they did not have that. And so I would recommend putting that back in, and then when you send the notice to the neighbors within 200 feet, also send the policy, and this might cut down on the amount of questions that staff gets, for example, because they could see readily. It would be more transparent as to what they had. And then finally, the presumption here is that some kind of documentation will be required because you don't want the city to appear to be capricious, for example. So some kind of documentation would be required. Okay, questions?
Well, we're a little out of line of what our agenda is. So the first thing, didn't we have, was the actual second reading of the ordinance?
Oh, okay. I'm sorry.
No, that's okay. It
I'm
didn't
sorry.
really make any difference. So what order, Manager Neal?
That's the right order that we had anticipated, that the adoption of the ordinance, you chose not to make that second reading at the original time that we did the first reading because you wanted to have the policy in place before you made it effective. So I don't believe there were any material questions about the ordinance itself when we read this on the first time. You had some material questions about
Right,
the
and
fowl,
I still do.
the chicken ordinance.
But I wanted to know, because I'll make the motion for the ordinance 2015-2 for the second reading now, if we want to stay within the agenda. Okay, so moved.
Second.
Can I?
Member Staunton.
So, I mean, I kind of consider these together. So I guess the
think you
question
can.
I have, and I don't know whether it's for the city manager or the city attorney, why are we choosing to? So my concern at the beginning was that we didn't have a standard that guided the city manager in making a decision on an objection, and that we ought to have some standard that's objective enough for the city manager to be able to apply it. Why are we putting that in a policy instead of in the ordinance?
I might just add that no other city does have a written policy, not even a written policy, much less putting this in the ordinance.
Would you say that again, please?
I'm not aware of any other city that has in the ordinance what we're putting in the policy. And they just don't have written policies. Although in practice in Eden Prairie, what Scott and the EEC has put forward is essentially what they are doing. They just don't have a written policy on it.
Member Staunton?
I think Councilmember Staunton and members of council, the best answer to that might be looking all the way down to item F in both versions of the proposed policy, where it says because it's not possible to anticipate every situation, the city manager designee must retain the right in their discretion to revoke, et cetera, et cetera. I think the idea was that a policy is generally easier to adapt. It's easier to look at new and emerging facts and operational practices and be able to judge them in a more real-time setting rather than to have to come back to the council every time there's a change in the way beekeeping happens to get a change to the ordinance. So I think that was the thinking at the time that it was put into policy form.
And I'm fine with that, but I think, and I get that, there might be advancements in science and detection and reactions, who knows what it might be. But shouldn't we have something in the ordinance that, maybe it's as simple as, the city manager will review these, taking into account public safety and health and welfare, and will from time to time promulgate with the approval of the council policies that articulate the factors that it'll take into account, and then we can. I guess that I'm worried that otherwise we don't have any hook to be able to be, citing a standard that we're relying on when we make that kind of decision.
I like that addition. Does anyone have a problem with that? It makes sense to me. It's just, you're not putting the registration rules in the ordinance. You're just relating to the fact that the
And you
city
can-
manager will be setting the rules, and if he's going to change something, he's going to come before the council.
Well, the key, I hope the key is that we don't want to make, I think one of the other keys is we don't want to make the council be the beekeeping appeals board.
And you
right?
don't even have to come in
Yeah.
front of us.
There's
If
the
you want to
weed
make
guy.
it just, I'm just, the
Well,
standard
however
being.
you write it.
Right.
Yeah.
That, and then you referred to, the factors you're going to adopt from, you're going to create a policy and adjust it from time to time to reflect what you're learning about bees.
Yeah. Okay.
So
I
do
like that approach.
Do you just add a section 6 to do that? O ye legal minds?
You do have a provision in there for revocation and suspension.
Yeah, I was thinking about tagging it on to the back of that one. On page 3.
Yeah, you could add a paragraph C, I suppose, to
At
8-316.
Yep.
Right.
It would basically say the city manager shall take into account
Okay.
public health, safety, and welfare in making decisions on appeals or revocation, denial, revocation, or suspension.
Did you write that down so that
No.
communications clerk / clerk Jen Benarette gets that? So will you repeat it so that she can get it, please?
The city manager, or in considering requests for denial, suspension, or revocation, the city manager shall consider the public health, safety, and welfare and base his decision on criteria included in policies he adopts and adjusts from time to time.
Right.
Is that the neutral his?
Yes. His or her.
His
He
or
or
her.
her. He or she.
Okay.
Do you want to read that back?
I can't read it
report it?
back anymore.
Jennifer, in a minute. She's still writing.
In consideration of request for revocation, the city manager will take into consideration public health, safety, and welfare issues and make a decision based on a policy he will adjust from time to time.
Is
The
that it?
policy is adopted and
Is that-
adjusted from time to time.
I was just going to say, is that clear enough that, aren't we pointing to this policy? Should we say which
We
policy?
haven't gotten there yet.
Right.
Well, I know.
I think what Member Staunton is proposing is that we not adopt the policy, but allow it to become part of, not to be part of the
Ordinance.
ordinance, but instead to be a policy that the manager would control.
And it does-
But we're going to have that discussion here momentarily about whether the council ought to adopt an apiary registration revocation policy,
Right.
correct?
Well, he's going to have some criteria, whether it's a policy we adopt or his own. Trust me, Manager Neal will have criteria.
We'll try. I think the key difference that Ms. Plunkett Latham and I are coming to you with really has to do with documenting the medical necessity.
And that's what I want to
Right.
discuss, but I was still trying to work in order of the agenda.
Yeah, so here's the way I got the language of C. The city manager shall take into account in his decision-making process issues of public health, safety, and welfare and base his decision on policies adopted and adjusted from time to time.
Okay. Now,
So now
I
it's-
would accept that as an addition to my motion, and will my second?
I second it.
Yeah.
Oh, yes, I accept it.
Okay. All right, with that change in the proposed form of ordinance on second reading do we need a voice vote or do we need a roll call?
It's a roll call vote.
Roll call, please.
Member Stewart.
Aye.
Member Swenson.
Aye.
Member Brindle.
Aye.
Member Staunton.
Aye.
Mayor Hovland.
Aye. All right, now let's next turn our attention to what Ms. Plunkett-Latham was talking about, which is the apiary registration revocation policy. We've got two forms of that in front of us, one prepared by staff and I think members of the Energy and Environment Commission. And then Manager Neal also prepared a draft dated 3/12/15. The other draft is dated 1/27/15. And Manager Neal, would you comment again on what you see as the distinctions between these two policies?
I would. I think, and I'll defer to Ms. Plunkett-Latham if she has different description of the difference. But in my view, the central difference between the two is what level of documentation we would require a concerned neighbor to demonstrate to us that they have an allergy. And as I stated in my cover memo to you, I'm a biased player on this issue because I do have a bee sting allergy. I called my mom this last weekend to find out when I was diagnosed. She thought it was 1977, but it could have been 1975. And so requiring someone in my shoes to go back and find that medical record is a burden. And in my view, that's not a burden that I think we should place on people. But again, that's my view as somebody with a biased point of view on this. And I just wanted to let you know that's where that's coming from.
Member Plunkett-Latham, do you want to comment on what you see as the distinctions between those?
I think Scott, Manager Neal has it correct that we're just talking about what kind of documentation and also whether it's to honeybees specifically. The Energy and Environment Commission felt that it was not a big burden to go and get an allergy test if you no longer had documentation. They're readily available at any allergy clinic, and they are covered by medical insurance. And so that is why we went with that recommendation.
All right, now people had their hands up. Member Swenson.
Well, I've been hit by lightning and I am allergic to bees, so I qualify for both of those. And, lightning was worse than the bee sting, but I have an EpiPen. Actually, I'm in agreement with Manager Neal. And maybe I do have a bias. I might tell you that. But I also don't think that it should be the obligation of a neighbor who has a bee allergy to find out what kind of bee allergy it is. So I would support Manager Neal's revised revocation policy.
Member Brindle.
I feel the same. I looked at both of these, and I just feel like he has more experience than I, and if he feels strongly that this is the best protection, that would also then provide that to our residents, and that this is easier for him to live with, I can't second guess that, so I will support that.
Your Honor. I just wanted to say, earlier this evening, Ms. Plunkett-Latham mentioned Jim Shadeen. Jim Shadeen is an employee of the city of Eden Prairie. He's the person who enforces this policy in Eden Prairie. It's very similar to the one that we're looking at. He's also an Edina resident, so he's been working with this issue and has been encouraging it. I did speak with him actually to find out how has this played out in reality, and he said in only 2 cases where a neighbor expressed the concern that they had an allergy to the neighbor who was planning to have bees, and in both of those cases, the neighbor who wanted to keep bees decided not to, just based on that. So the city didn't have to get involved in revoking or anything or mediating anything. The neighbors who just didn't want to cause fear and concern among their immediate neighbors because they wanted a new hobby or they wanted to do something different with their life.
Member Stewart.
I have more of a question rather than a viewpoint, and my interpretation of Member Staunton's amendment to the motion that we just adopted was that we would relegate these kinds of policies to policies that would be promulgated by the manager and not dealt with at the city council level, and that we wouldn't need to create an ordinance with these policies. Is that not correct?
I think that gave an option for that, certainly, didn't it?
This, my understanding is that if we chose to adopt one of these two revocation policies, they would not be embodied in the ordinance. It would just simply become policies like
I think what
like
member,
we have in other areas of the city.
I think what Member Stewart is saying is, do we really need to approve such a policy? And instead, shouldn't we be leaving it to the city manager? It's good to see this and kind of grind through it. I think we're on the nut of the issue, which is how do you make a judgment in each individual case, partly mediating, partly if you can't resolve it, somebody has to make the call and make it on some objective facts, and it's going to differ in every case, and it might depend on how hard it is to find the documentation, or it might depend on how severe it is, and it's hard to predict all that in advance.
So,
I don't need to vote on anything tonight. I was just giving feedback.
yeah, I'm not sure we ever need to vote on this.
Right.
Is my point.
We would tell you that most of the operating policies that we enforce that are developed to enforce an ordinance are not adopted by the council.
Oh.
Occasionally they are, but most of them are not.
Well, I'm fine with that. It just, that would also then, in my view, give the city manager the ability to modify and update this policy without council action. So, okay.
Just a question for you, Manager Neal, and Elliot, you may have a comment on this as well. It strikes me that you've got an issue, you've got a known bias, and it seems to me that you'd be better off having some sort of a policy to use as a guideline to prevent people from accusing you of
Yes.
being heavy-handed because of your personal situation.
Right.
So for me personally, I'd rather give you a tool to work with that you can use as a guide and say the council put this in place and I'm following their directive, regardless of what policy it is. I'd want that kind of insulation, I think.
You know, normally when the council adopts an ordinance that says the city manager shall, sometimes it's me, but sometimes it is my designee. In this case, it probably would be a designee who's going to be closer to that issue, not just because of that reason, but other reasons as well.
And there will be a written policy, though not one that we needed to approve.
No.
And your choice as a council, if this issue gets out of hand or it becomes something that you're dealing with on an everyday basis, is you get to amend the ordinance and make the ordinance much more prescriptive.
Okay.
Yeah, understanding that there's going to be a policy, it's still the fact that we have in front of us a policy that you've crafted that your designee would probably follow carefully.
Mm-hmm.
I still think I'd rather have the cover if I were you, but if my fellow council members don't see the necessity for having a policy in place, then I'll accede to that general attitude. So,
Well, it's not like there wouldn't be a policy in place, it's just that
policy
it
in place, put in place by the council.
Right, okay,
Fair.
okay.
Excuse me, thanks for that clarification. All right, so we want to just pass on item B, apiary registration revocation policy?
Sure.
Yes. All right, thank you. Ordinance number 2015-05, we're back talking about code amendments regarding fowl. And Plunkett Latham.
See, we have a chicken in the back room.
Yeah, it's the biggest one in town. Member Plunkett Latham.
All right.
I guess we should say Citizen Plunkett Latham now.
That's right.
No longer on the Energy and Environment Commission. Do you want to take this matter?
Yes, I would be honored to. As requested by council at the January 20th meeting, an email was received that evening, not in enough time for me to be able to review, but council asked me to review it thereafter. And I went to visit a Morningside hen house to see if the hens were being properly managed, and found them to be properly managed by conventional hen pet standards. They were active, healthy, well-fed, no signs of injury, beloved family pets. Council also asked me to provide the animal cruelty statutes, and I have done so in your packet. There are 11 pages of those. At the February 12th EEC meeting, EEC found that the state animal cruelty statutes were adequate and that no further changes were needed to the proposed foul amendments. Then yesterday, the same Edina resident supplied another email, which I have reviewed, assuming that council would want me to do that. And that particular email, the resident requested precise legislation to ensure that we follow best practices with respect to pet hens. The University of Minnesota Extension does have best practices published, and the URL for that is in your packet there tonight. I don't believe that we need to add any of these to any policy or ordinance. The EEC is going to sponsor a program on chicken keeping should that ordinance pass, and one of the things that we could pass out at that educational program are the University of Minnesota's best practices. Then also in the email from yesterday, the resident did go on to note that Minnesota statute, and I'm quoting, Minnesota statutes do in fact set out fairly specific provisions relating to the proper and humane treatment of animals. They provide for levels of care far exceeding any standard that merely exists to prevent animal abuse. And in the email, he excerpted Minnesota Statute 346.40 on pet birds. He held out as a recommended ordinance Sacramento, San Diego, and Charlotte's. Now, both of those are considerably warmer climates than we have here. But I found that everything in those statutes was covered in the pet birds state statute as well as in our ordinances. Between the two, you have everything necessary there. One of the main differences was that we do not have a licensing fee and permit process for pet chickens. Most cities don't have a licensing and permit process. We don't. Chickens don't present any public injury problems, not like, for example, bee sting could. And there aren't significant diseases associated with them as indicated in the University of Minnesota extension memo that I have in your packet. So I don't believe that we need a licensing or permit process. It wouldn't offer us anything, and it would take up additional staff time. The residents' email yesterday also opposed allowing schools to have egg hatching projects. I know of only one Edina school that is doing this. There is a 6th grade class that does have an egg hatching process. In fact, I think some of the graduates of that science project are sitting here in the audience tonight. You do have a letter in a past council packet from one of the parents of the children that participated in this, indicating how much their kids learned from it, and they do recommend continuing it. I don't know of any children who have participated in this project that have gotten any diseases from chickens as a result of it, but the university memo does state that it's always a good practice to have kids wash their hands after handling chickens, because there is a small chance of salmonella. Now, this is true with other types of animals, for example, turtles. Chickens are not unique in that site. So, do you have any questions?
Questions for Ms. Plunkett-Latham?
Your Honor, I can tell you from a staff standpoint, we don't have any concerns with this particular ordinance and support it as presented.
All right.
Is it 4 chickens we're allowing?
It is.
Okay.
For hens.
For some reason, or hens, sorry. For some reason, I was at 3, so I.
But there's now an
But some
exception for the
cities-
school, right?
Yes, there's an exception for the school. I think it's up to 18, and it does not state hens, because when they're chicks, you can't tell if you've got a hen or a rooster.
And that's new since the last reading, right?
That is correct.
Thank you.
Yeah, there are some cities that have 3, some have 5 as a maximum. And our ordinance is 4, and I don't know whether I can turn right to it, but one of the basis for 4 is that you start with 2 and then get 2 additional when the hens stop laying eggs. So
Would that be called hen rotation?
it would be.
Mm-hmm.
Well, I will move, I'll just jump out here and move this. We can continue to discuss. I'll move ordinance 2015-05, amending Chapter 8 of the code regarding fowl.
Second?
Is that for first reading only or both?
You want to have a waiver of second reading? or approval?
I would entertain waiver of second reading if the rest of the council is ready for that.
I'll second that.
All right, we're going to find out. Council discussion.
So when you have, I guess the educational 18 immature ones, so when is a chicken no longer immature, that it now finds a new home?
At the end of the school year, I think it only takes them literally about less than a month to hatch them out, and they're not on the school property very long. I think they start it's time so that at the end of the school year, then those parents that give consent, the kids take them home, and we have some of the kids in the audience that have taken the chicks home.
Okay, and then let's just go back to review their living quarters and my fear that they not be adequately provided for. And this is probably when I lived next to a dog that was on a 2-foot chain outside all the time and his water bowl was frozen. So I have, this fear of having to worry about something like that. You said that I didn't need that in the ordinance because people were going to take care of them anyway. Isn't that?
It's in the state statute.
That they take care of. Well, I saw what for animal enclosure and everything, is the minimum and minimum cage size in the state statute? Is that the section 8-211 part?
No, the state statute is for birds in particular came in yesterday's email from that particular resident. And that was, is it 340 point?
So in that state statute, does it give minimum sizes for each?
No, it does not state minimum sizes. We do not state minimum sizes for any animals in town. But it does state, let me just find that for you.
I mean, I got all the cruelty.
It's in the kind of the middle of our packet.
Page 3,
is
page 4.
3. It's labeled page 3.
Well, that's the part I asked, the 8-211, that section?
Yeah.
No, it's the state statute is 346.40 pet birds, and this is subdivision 4 on shelter. It says a shelter or cage for a bird must be constructed of materials that are impervious to moisture and can be readily cleaned. Purchase and other space must be provided to allow the bird to roost without physical harassment from other birds. And then it has ventilation, temperature, lighting, sanitation. This is all what the state of Minnesota regarded as sufficient.
Okay. Then I'm fine with that. I just wanted some protection for the birds.
Mm-hmm. No, that's good.
All right, any further discussion?
Well,
Roll.
I just want to recognize that we have a guest who is particularly enthusiastic about chickens. And I wonder if she would, maybe she wouldn't, but maybe she would like to step forward and say hello and tell us a little bit about what she loves about chickens and how she's looking forward to this. You want to come to the...
Can you tell us your name?
Catherine.
Catherine, and do you have a chicken at home?
No.
Would you like to have a chicken at home?
Yeah.
Okay. And who did you bring up with you next to you?
I'm her sister.
Okay. And your name?
Alice.
Hello, Alice and Catherine.
Thank you.
Thanks, ladies. All right, roll call, please.
Member Swenson.
Aye.
Member Brindle.
Aye.
Member Staunton.
Aye.
Member Stewart.
Aye.
Mayor Hovland.
Aye. All right.
Thank you,
Folks, thanks for your
Council.
input during the process, too, and for all of you that worked on these two matters, we thank you for your diligent work and always your good leadership here.
May I ask how soon these go into force? I understand once they're published. About how long does that take? I know there's some people, 3 or 4, who are ready to apply for their apiary license, and I'm just wondering when they should.
Elliot, any thoughts there? on its effective date?
It's upon publication, so I assume we send it into the...
Not this Thursday then, but next Thursday.
And then would
So
that,
the 26th.
and then our forms for the application will be online at that time, Manager Neal? Is that right?
Maybe?
If you've got the forms ready, we can get them posted.
Okay. We'll say yes then.
Okay.
But I think the best thing to do would be to call us. Sometimes there's a glitch in the way that the publication schedule works, and our city clerk is the person who handles that, and she's not with us tonight to let us know if there's anything else that we need to think about. But I think it's fair to say it's going to be in the next week or two.
And would it be the animal control officer they should call to find out if it's ready?
I would say, well, they should. I would say they should call the city clerk's office.
City clerk, okay. Because I know I'll get that question
Yeah.
tonight as soon as I get home. But thank you very much. Appreciate all your support.
Thank you. Manager Neal, the next matter is yours, amending the terms of the electric franchise granted to Xcel Energy Company. You've got some action required there.
Thank you, Your Honor. This is an action that I described to you at our March 3rd council meeting. We have a franchise agreement with Xcel Energy that expires on August 15th. There is a process that we must go through to renegotiate the renewal of that franchise agreement. It's a discussion that goes on with Xcel Energy. They wish to renew the agreement, and they've even proposed language to us to do that. But before accepting the language directly from Xcel, we've had some interest in some in our commissions and others in the community of people who would like to express some opinions about what they would like to see in the new franchise agreement. That doesn't mean that we will include it, because it may not be lawful, it may not be acceptable, and it may not be in the interest of the city. And that is really in the determination of the council to make that judgment. But in order to give ourselves some time to do that public process, however abbreviated it may be, I did seek the consent from Xcel Energy to extend the franchise extend the existing franchise an additional 90 days. That would allow us some more time to have an authentic public process. And they consented to do that, and that's what this document does tonight. So it approves the extension of a 90-day time period, and then it lays out in sort of broad detail the timeline of a process that we would undertake to gather public input on the franchise.
Good. Thank you for that input. Questions for Manager Neal? Member Brindle.
Just a clarification. We did talk about this briefly a couple of weeks ago when you first brought this up as part of manager and council comments. But this agreement comes up for renewal every 20 years.
I believe this is, there's Michelle Swanson in the audience. She's not expecting you to speak tonight, but she's nodding her head affirmatively that it's a 20-year franchise, and they would probably be seeking, I'm guessing, 20 more. Yeah.
Okay. And, you know, I don't know some of these, I guess, I don't even know what to call it. But for instance, on our bill, we buy wind energy. And some of the alternative energy methods, does any of that enter into what we would put in this agreement, that we would encourage Xcel Energy to be aggressive in providing and researching alternative energy sources?
Councilmember Brindle and members of council, it certainly can be part of our discussion, and it is a discussion. It's part of every discussion, I'm guessing, that cities have with Xcel Energy or whoever their electrical utility is. And Minneapolis had a similar kind of discussion that really went quite far. I don't know if our discussion would go quite that far. There are limitations about what the Public Utilities Commission will allow us to negotiate and what they won't. But it certainly is going to be part of our discussion.
Okay, thank you.
I'll make a motion to approve ordinance number 20-15-6, amending the term.
Second.
Got a motion and a second. Discussion. Just a quick comment, and Member Brindle, you caused me to think about this. We had a presentation at the Regional Council of Mayors on the goals of Xcel over the next 20 years in terms of things like increasing renewables and reduction of greenhouse gases, and I think that might be worthwhile seeing if we can get that PowerPoint presentation.
Okay.
The CEO happened to make it to the Regional Council of Mayors, but I'm sure we could arrange for someone from communications to give that same presentation to the council. I think it'd be very beneficial in this process. So
it'd be nice to have that as part of the record.
All right, so we've got a motion and a second. No further discussion. All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Aye. Opposed say nay. Carried.
I'm sorry, sir, this is a roll call vote?
Roll call. Thank you.
Member Brindle?
Aye.
Member Staunton?
Aye.
Member Stewart?
Aye.
Member Swenson?
Aye.
Mayor Hovland?
Aye.
Then,
that-
of course, waive second reading.
Right, and you all
Okay.
voted aye. So.
All right. Director Milner has the next matter, which is the update on the Promenade Phase 4 contract, which will be an interesting discussion.
Mayor, members of council, thank you. Yep, next we'll talk about the Promenade Phase 4, a little update on the contract. We've hit a little bump in the road on this very important project, so I'll give you a little timeline and some of the issues that we've encountered. So please recall we opened bids on February 3rd. Here on the 17th of February, awarded the project of Meisinger Construction for $1.27 million. On the 24th of February, when we inquired, where's your signed contracts, they sent us a letter saying, we made an error in our bid and we want to rescind the bid and the bid bond. It wasn't on the face of the bid, but they have an error in their paperwork. So tonight we'll discuss some possible options on how to continue that project. So just recall we went through these project costs on the 17th, showing Meisinger's low bid of $1.7 million, subtotal construction with a total project cost of $1.4, and we funded that mainly with park dedication and TIF funds. And we did pull some additional funding out of those two funding sources to meet the low bidder of Meisinger at 1.2, above what our CIP estimate was. So we created some options that are in your council packet tonight. Option 1, we could just award to the second lowest bidder. That would be Peterson Companies. The benefits of that, it keeps the project on schedule. There's no re-bidding impacts such as delays or re-engineering. The project is more out of budget. It uses more of those TIF and park dedication funding sources. And the total project cost would be $1.5 million versus the $1.4 that we previously awarded. Option 2, we could rebid the same project, go out and see if we can get some additional bidders on it. The benefits, we have the same project scope. We think bids will likely come in higher than the first bid due to the timing. We were losing about 6 weeks in the bidding environment. Contractors are getting busy with other bids. And then if that does happen, the financial cost could be higher than even awarding to the second bidder, and we'd have more issues with funding sources. The third option that we considered was rebidding a smaller project. We would receive most of the project features would be completed. We receive that as a benefit closer to the original budget. The cost associated with that would be slightly lesser of the project elements. We'd also have $15,000 in additional engineering fees to recreate those bidding documents for rebid. And we think the financial cost would be back into the range of 1.2 to 1.5, similar to what we previously awarded with that original bid. Some of those elements that we could do in option 3 if we rebid a smaller project, if you look at the graphic, the pink shaded area here is where all the native plantings were. We could save quite a bit of money in that area and potentially hold that portion of the project till the property adjacent to it potentially redevelops in the future. That's the Macy's site. There's some benches along the bike path that we could remove. The 3 X's up here are the bridges for consideration. If we realign that stream bed, the blue line, realign the trail, we could get rid of those bridges, and those are rather expensive features. And another thing we could do without changing the feel of the project is shrink this pond. We could shrink it anywhere from 10 to 40% in that area and have some cost savings associated with that from grading and also the finish of that pond bottom. There was a question in the last couple of days about rebidding the project. When do you need to rebid it? It's not a specifically defined criteria. It's basically when you feel like the scope of the project changes significantly, and that's something kind of for us to discuss tonight. And we ran, just for your information, different scenarios. If we pulled various bid items out of the bid, it still did not affect the overall bid results and the order of the contractors on that bid. So that was something we took into account. So our recommendation, as presented in the staff report, is to get it within more budget, within our budget considerations, as listed in the CIP, is to rebid a smaller project. And then following that discussion, we'll have to have another discussion on the bid bond discussion. The bid bond is valued at $63,427.50. As written in the thing, there's some issues with getting that bid bond from a cost and timing standpoint based on litigation between the two parties. City feels like we have a case to receive that bid bond. Their attorney feels like they have a case. So it would, based on the opinion of our attorney, be 1 to 2 years of litigation to get a value of potentially $60,000, and we may spend that much just in litigation. The contractor has verbally committed to a cash settlement of $10,000 to get out of this contract. And with that, I'll open it up for questions and comments.
Stuart.
Questions? Member Stewart?
Everybody makes mistakes, and I don't want to be an unforgiving jerk about this, but this particular mistake is kind of frosts me because we, as a city, are put in a bad spot. We're given bad choices because of their mistake. I don't think 10 grand does it, but the questions that I have, the question is, how do we move forward from here? How do we get to a decent place? I don't like the fact and actually the way I read it, I don't think we necessarily need to rebid if we don't change the project. But I do want to ask our attorney about what our possibilities are with respect to still working with Meisinger, the group that made the error, and yet giving them some accommodation for the higher cost of this particular input that they didn't get the decimal point in the right place on. Because if we work with Meisinger and we add the cost of the error, it's still significantly less than the second best bidder.
I think Director Milner talked to them about that. Director Milner, you and I had a conversation Monday morning, and it seems to me I remember you saying that you had talked to them about working with them and they have zero interest in working with us.
Correct. We wanted to hold them to their contract price. There's on the face of it, there wasn't a mistake. We said, let's get creative. You're the experts in this. You want your name on this project. This is going to be a signature project for your company. Be creative. Tell us how you can make this work for you. We don't want you to lose money. We're not here to run you into the ground. Let's do it for 1.27 and let's figure out some economies of scale, work with your subs, and let's get it done and make a profit. But they weren't willing to come to the table on that. They just
so they're just looking to be excused from their obligation.
Yep.
Correct.
Now I'm really frustrated.
That's too bad.
I mean, I just think it gives us a lot of bad choices. If we get any other bidder, because we're so late now getting these bids out, it's going to cost us more because people are already booked up. They don't need the work. We may even, depending on when we're able to break ground, miss a significant portion of our construction season because you can't do this in the wintertime. So I don't know. I don't know what the duration of the project would be. So,
or you lower the scope of the project. You diminish the scope of the project,
and I'm not happy about changing the scope of the project. I don't think we should be forced to change the scope of the nice project we had intended for the city of Edina because of the error of this contractor. I think it's criminal.
Just to answer the timing question, whether or not it's a smaller project or the current size project, even if we rebid it, we can construct it during this construction season.
Member Swenson.
I don't think it makes sense to rebid it where it is or as a smaller project because we're in not as good a bidding environment. We like the project that we designed. We have a second bidder, Peterson. Have you looked at Peterson as far as getting references as to quality of their work? I don't think we've had any experience with them before.
I have. We actually have. They did the garden park improvements in 2013 through the Parks Department. So we talked to the Parks Department. They were satisfied with their work. They're highly regarded. They specialize in these kind of projects. They do a lot of the work themselves, whereas Meisinger was going to sub that out. They've done work up in Forest Lake, and they're on a quote list for many of the communities up near Forest Lake. So when they have a specialty park project, they give these guys a call for quotes. So they are highly regarded.
Well, here's what I'm going to suggest, because I agree. We designed a great project. I don't want to lose it. I think you did make a few reasonable accommodations that I would be willing to accept that don't change the plan, and that is waiting to do some things, like the grass area behind Macy's and a couple of the benches. You and I talked Monday about the possibility of taking out a middle bridge. I know that's just $10,000, but it's $10,000. We'll still have two bridges in that area. You and I also talked about the possibility of changing the size of the pond, since it's really not a pond that we're using to contain water. It's just a water feature. It's not a...
Correct. It's not an infiltration.
Thank you. Infiltration pond. What does pond size changing, downsizing the pond mean to anyone here, and what does it mean to us dollar-wise? So why don't you answer the dollar-wise first, and then I'll let all my council members respond to this concept.
Yep, we looked at Councilmember Swenson reducing the pond size for about 40%, removing those native plantings, and then taking out two benches, keeping the majority of the bridges in place, and we'd be getting close to the $80,000 to $100,000 savings in that regard, and we could work. In my opinion, in that case, it wouldn't be enough of a scope change to rebid it, that we could just work with Peterson companies and get the project completed.
Well, I've stated my position, so I'll sit back and let everyone else.
Sure. And those are good thoughts. Member Brindle.
Well, I don't want to change it because it's a great plan. It's a beautiful plan. And it's in a park that's enjoyed by the most people who, I mean, that's the most visited park in our city, so it does deserve to be as good as we can make it. I would not remove benches if we were going to do something, which in my mind we should not. But I have a plan to kind of experiment here with you. But I wouldn't want to take out benches because it's the contemplative nature of that park that people really enjoy, and that's enhanced by benches. Native plants now, native plants later, that's fine. It's grasses now, as I recall, is it not? What is it now?
Yep, just grass. That's mowed by the...
Well, and you know they can handle a year or two in the future, but I don't. You know, it's neither here nor there for me. That doesn't break the project. What breaks the project is really modifying something that really fits. That's why the pond is the size that it is. It fits that area. So I don't see changing that. It's a $175,000 difference that we need to make up in order to hire Peterson, to offer Peterson the job. So what I would like to look at is funding by source. We have park dedication, we have tax increment financing, and we have utility fund storm from which we could divide among which we could divide 175,000. Is it reasonable to look at those three funding sources to make up the $175,000 difference?
Councilmember Swenson, I think the first two funding sources, so the park dedication and TIF funding, would be a consideration of the council to use those funds. We've talked about the various priorities of those funding sources. In my opinion, the storm sewer fund is maximized on this location.
Okay.
We want to be able to use
That's
the
what I wanna know.
storm for storm-related.
Great, so so the stormwater fund stays as it is. So if we can look at 85,000 from each of the others, which is a big number, but that's what I'm asking.
Manager Neal?
Your Honor and members of council, the other option that you can consider for this project is a levy option. And we do not currently have an HRA levy, but we could. And actually, it is one of the proposals I intend to make to you later this year, that we establish an HRA tax levy. It is a number that feels sizable, but in the terms of an HRA tax levy, it's actually a pretty de minimis impact across a $10 billion tax base. So that's an option that if you want to keep the scope of the project and add additional revenue to it, that would be one source to do that.
Okay.
And I understand that Director Contry, who's not here tonight, but was not wanting to spend more money because she has some repair work that she wants to do at Centennial Lakes on the bridges that are, the paint's off and they're rusting. So I wouldn't want to leave part of the park that we've already built as we add on to this park not being able to be kept up.
Right.
So I'm hesitant to ask for more money out of that area of our funding that is really needs to go for maintenance in the south part of the park.
Yeah, that's correct. She had there's some bridge issues in that area.
Do we have any numbers of how much that is going to come in?
I believe she's working with a consultant right now, and there's not a number in place.
Okay.
So we talked about an opportunity potentially that if the council wants to go forward, we could come back at the next council meeting with some funding options, lay out, the impacts on TIF park dedication, and also
Because we would also have to come back for a formal contract award as well, right? Can we do that this evening, or? No, I think we could award tonight. So if the council's of a mind to award the project as bid to the next bidder without reducing scope, you can do that tonight and award that contract, and you can ask staff to bring back the funding plan to do it. You know that there are some options. We would present you with a couple of options.
Okay.
An option that has just the further reductions in HRA, cash on hand, and park dedication fees. Another option would be to add some kind of HRA tax levy to support this piece of it. So that's a debt finance option, and probably an option C that has a little bit of each.
Here's a thought. We got that letter from Meisinger explaining the mistake that they made in their calculations. And Elliot, I'm not asking you for a legal opinion on what our position is on their bond or what type of action we can pursue against them over and above the bond for breach of contract. But they made a $117,000 mistake. So we got a $175,000 spread. They would have still been the low bidder by $68,000. That's interesting. That's almost the amount of their bond. My thought would be that we pursue the bond. I don't know if the bond provides that the winner gets attorney's fees or not, but I think that's one thing we want to take a look at. We could consider at some point in time pursuing the bond within the allowable period of time, and then just awarding to Peterson and get this project built the way we had approved it, because we knew that this was going to be phase 4. It was going to be as significant and important to that park system at Centennial Lakes as anything that went before it. And I think we've been diminishing. I don't want to have a Centennial Lakes Class A and a Centennial Lakes Class B. I think that would be a mistake. So I'd rather approve Peterson, and I understand Peterson has indicated they would stand by their bid.
Correct.
And then think about whether or not we want to pursue Meisinger further once we get a little bit more input on whether or not the bond may provide that if whoever prevails gets attorney's fees on top of the recovery of the bond, or otherwise some other type of legal recourse that we might have where we wouldn't have to worry about paying the attorney's fees if we prevail. Because I think we will prevail. To have somebody like Meisinger, who's experienced, say our subcontractor made a mistake on their bid, and we didn't catch it. They underbid the boulders. I mean, they had, I don't know how many tons of boulders in here, and the bid was $12,000, and it should have been $129,000, and their bid guys didn't catch it, and that's not our fault when we're Meisinger.
Well,
I say,
but even if we're willing to work with them and make some accommodation on the cost of the boulders, they're saying they don't want to work with us at all.
Right.
So that's a pretty flimsy excuse to get out of the whole dang deal. I mean,
right. I agree with you. I can see why you're upset. I am too. So I'd entertain a motion that we approve the project as scoped and award the bid to Peterson Companies for 1,443,339.23.
Second.
You want to make a motion?
Oh, I'll make a motion. I thought you made a motion.
I'll just entertain a motion. And second, we've got a motion and a second.
Sorry.
So we aren't going to change or take anything out and wait to do it later?
No, and we're going to make a decision internally, I think, with council's advice on whether or not we want to pursue anything against Meisinger. And we don't have to talk about that in a public venue.
Okay.
Got a motion and a second. Discussion? All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Opposed say nay. Carried. All right, next matter is consideration of bids for the stair elevator at 50th and France Business District. And Mr. Olson and Mr. Nuendorf have this matter, which has turned out to be more of a complication than we wanted for an important sort of element of the project down there. So let's hear about the problem and try to figure out how to solve it.
It is, Mr. Mayor, members of the City Council. In January of last year, you received a feasibility study that included a $1.1 million stair elevator tower at the northeast corner of the south ramp. In April of last year, we approved a $220,000 design to begin the design of that stair elevator tower. And over the course of the summer, we finished the construction of 5 different contracts of 50th and France and finished the design of, or neared the completion of the design of the stair elevator tower. In about November, December, we got the inclination from the engineer that there was going to be a cost overrun, but we were about 95% done with the design. We wanted to complete the design and move forward and continue on with the bidding to see if the climate in the bidding environment would lend itself to a cheaper project. We also did some cost-saving measures within the design to help out with that aspect. Unfortunately, in February 10th of this year, we did open bids and we got 5 bids. The results of the bids were shown in your case report and recommendation tonight, with the apparent low bidder, Morcon Construction, at $1.429 million. Tonight, I wanted to talk a little bit. Unfortunately, we don't have a great deal of options with regards to changing the design to save money like we do in Park Project. And so when all is said and done, that $1.1 million, when you take into consideration all the soft costs as well as the construction contingency, amounts to about just a little over $2 million. Tonight, we are here before you to talk about the alternates that were shown in the case and some public engagement efforts that we went through over the course of the last month or so. And and Bill is here to talk to you about that.
Thanks, Mr. Olson.
What I thought might be helpful was to show some illustrations of the project. Let's see. Let's see, Jordan, does that zoom in? So this was one of the many improvements that were requested and agreed on at the 50th and France Business District. For the last several years, we've talked about improvements there. In 2013 and early 2014, we agreed on the scope of improvements that Brian had summarized, and the vast majority of those improvements are made. The last one is this elevator core, and it was intended to be located in the public alleyway that's next to the Edina Theater and next to the building where Banana Republic, next to Raku, in that area. The public alley is extremely narrow. It's 8 feet wide. So in order to actually have an elevator fit, we knew it was going to be tight, and as Brian mentioned, when the designers got into it and started figuring things around, it seemed to get tighter and tighter and tighter. But this is a sketch of what the elevator core would look like. This is the main level. In this corner, this is the Edina Theater. On the bottom portion is the existing parking garage, and this building is the 3925 building where Banana Republic is. So that's the approximate location. There's this is if you could zoom it out a little bit more. Okay, thank you. These are color renderings of what the elevator core looks like. It's a very basic functional structure. There's not a whole lot to cut. There's not much to trim. It's just the basics to provide an elevator. While there is an elevator, we can't say that this makes the building ADA accessible. The way the existing parking structure is built, it's physically impossible to make it fully ADA compliant unless you tear it down and start over. So this is definitely a convenience, and it's an improvement, but it's purely functional at this point.
Not ADA compliant because the width wouldn't be wide enough for a wheelchair?
The width would be adequate. It's the slope.
Getting there.
Yeah, getting there and getting off. So part of the parking garage is level, but parts of it are ramped, and the ramp is fairly steep, too steep to be safely conveyed by a wheelchair. And then once you exit the parking structure, if you head towards France Avenue, you're discharged into an alley. That's an active garbage truck area, loading zone. There is a curb cut that leads through the loading zone, and then you can connect to a sidewalk a little while later. It's far from ideal, far from perfect. Nothing is easy at this particular location. And then to further raise our concerns, these pink areas are portions of private property that would have to be acquired to make this elevator fit into this area. The city has approached both property owners. They're interested to work with us. They are not interested in donating free land to us. We've asked on multiple occasions. And the purchase cost is not included in the $2 million estimate that Brian threw out. So that's a further contingency. Actually, in Brian's number, he did include a small amount for land acquisition. I stand corrected. Based on recent conversations with the owners, I think it would be higher than that. So what I'm showing you here are three options. When we sat down with the parking advisory team, we've been working with this advisory team for the last couple of years to find the right scope of improvements, the right balance of improvement. We sat down on February 18th after we received the bids. We sat down again this morning to see if there's any other options that are worth pursuing. We worked with our engineering firm, Kimley Horn Associates. They found that there are three options that technically fit, where we could build a pedestrian ramp It would not serve all the levels of the parking garage. It would only serve the second level. So there's 3 places where it fit. There's challenges to each. They're, depending on your perspective, they're eyesores from various tenant spaces and various public corridors and sidewalks. The general direction we received from our advisory team this morning was, if we're going to do it right, and if we can't do it right, don't do it at all. So there are some options out there, but we would have to do a lot more exploring to see if any of them is truly viable and supported.
So when they say if you're going to do it right, does that mean put in an elevator some way, somehow, or don't do it at all?
That
don't
was
do anything?
That was the gist this morning. If we're going to do it, do the full-blown elevator, bite the bullet, dig up an extra $1 million from somewhere and do it. The recommendation of staff, of Brian and myself, is to not go that route. When we convened the original parking advisory team a few years ago, we considered 2 elevators, one at the middle structure and one at the south structure. And at that point, we were throwing around numbers of about $900,000 a piece. And the will of that group, of those conversations, was that's too much for the elevators at this point. Now we're in a position where we're over that amount for one elevator, and it's far from a perfect project.
So the ramp to the existing interior corridor and then using the existing interior elevator is not an option you'd recommend?
It's something that could be pursued. The cost of that was estimated to be, there's a big range, between $600,000 and $800,000 for that, because we have to go through and demolish tenant spaces. One space is an existing dentist office that has medical setups. The other space was just reoccupied by a tenant about 2 months ago. So there's a lot of unknowns as far as what we have to demo to create that space. It may be worth pursuing, but we're not at that point tonight.
And if we were to use that elevator, presumably belongs to the people who own the building, and if the city were to use that for the parking lot, I would assume we'd have to pay them to use their elevator for that?
That's a correct assumption.
I guess I would like to add as well that option was discussed today as well, and there was concern that it wasn't going to be as opening and inviting as it could be for the whole district, and that it was going to be more towards that one building. And then there's not land acquisition costs associated with the cost estimates that you see in your packet.
Did we ever look at not trying to bring the elevator down on the north side closest to all the retail, but doing something on the south side where it's our property, and you've got plenty of room to work there. Once you hit the ground, of course, you got some problems that you have to deal with in getting across driveway openings, and then you end up in the BMO Harris parking lot, I suppose, or that alleyway back there, or somebody gets out and goes up, walks up the ramp just like they do all the time anyway. But did we ever look at the south side?
Well, we did look at 5 different alternative locations for the stair elevator tower. We looked at criteria such as we looked at it over by the trash receptacles and relocating the trash receptacles. We did contemplate the south, but because you would be let out in an area that was away from the district, we felt that was less appealable. It would be easier to construct for sure.
Seems like you could put a beautiful glass elevator on that south side that could become almost architectural from the street, and you would take them down to, this is another idea, you take them down to that lower covered level that then they would get out, not on an exterior basis, but they get out to the interior, and then they just walk up a slight incline or over to the stairs and up, and then they're on that ground level. So why wouldn't we potentially take a look at that?
So that's a great suggestion. We considered that 2 years ago when we were looking at the possible elevator locations. There's a couple challenges. There's lots of challenges with the existing buildings. The structural frame is a post-tension concrete structure, which means you can't just demolish a little piece and plop a new shaft in it, because then you compromise the structural stability of the entire garage. Engineers are smart folks. They'll figure out how to avoid a problem, but there's a high cost for that. And putting an elevator on the exterior face, a nice glass elevator with a nice presence, it's the first thing you see. We talked about that again this morning, frankly, with the owners and businesses that are on our advisory team, and we ran into the same brick wall there. It's an easy place to put it. It's a nice, attractive addition to the parking structure, and no one would use it because it discharges people at a place that isn't their destination. They want to be on the opposite end of the block. And this would discharge folks very close to BMO Harris, which might be good for BMO Harris, except that BMO has their own private parking lot with handicap stalls already marked in it. So we considered it on a couple occasions, but it didn't seem like it was achieving the result that people were looking for.
Did you look at running two little skyway sections over towards the Edina Theater and run the elevator down the wall of the Edina, west wall of the Edina Theater?
We did. We looked at that option as well. We even looked into an option of possibly shrinking the size of one of the movie theaters itself and putting an elevator shaft internal to that building where we had a little bit more room. It's hard to take out half a movie theater and still have something that's effective. So we've looked at countless different places to put it. We met most recently about 3 weeks ago, walked the site, tried to look at how we could serve the second level, the third level, maybe even the basement level. We considered putting the elevator on the west side of the garage, right near the Edina Liquor. There's a little indent into the building. We could probably put it there. Again, it wouldn't necessarily serve any of the France Avenue businesses, and the cost would probably be pretty similar. So we didn't pursue that in detail.
And on that side, as we look to the future, Lund's is intending at some point to move over to where the post office is. Will that grocery store then be demolished at that point, or will they repurpose the building?
That's a question I wish I had an answer to. I don't know that.
And so at some future point, would that be a good place to put an elevator? Or not? I mean...
It could potentially.
Yeah.
I mean, that's why we considered it. The challenge there is that the city has land rights to the little portion that's indented right in front of the liquor store, but the driveway where we would need to put a walkway is actually part of the Lund's property. So we're looking at land acquisition just to get to the place where we could land an elevator.
I was thinking more if they demolish it and they intend to put new retail stores there of some sort, they might actually be sponsors for an elevator. They might want to have that coming right to their doorstep.
Yeah, that's a great suggestion. In fact, that's part of what the consensus was this morning, was that maybe we should wait for the right time, for that right opportunity to make this improvement. It seemed like we're forcing it today. I mean, things could happen. The theater could change. The Banana Republic building could change. The 3939 building could change. Lund's could change. Maybe there's a shakeup at BMO Harris where that changes and it makes sense to do something on the south. But at this point in time, it seemed like this project was being forced, and that's what led to our staff recommendation to take a pass on these bids at this time and wait for that next better opportunity.
Mr. Mayor, members of the council, I have to tell you that this came with an awful lot of deliberation and discussion on our part. I'm hired to get things done, and so to throw things out, throw bids out, it was a very difficult decision. That being said, just wanted to give you a little bit of update on what we have completed with the 5 projects that we did last summer. Originally, there was a $3.3 million approval for the accessible portion of the project. 2.572 has been completed, and I would say that about 99% of the construction activity that was going to be assessed is completed, so their costs are going to be decreased by close to just over $700,000. On our side, we had $2.375 million is what we committed to this project. And without moving forward with this elevator, it turns out that some of the things like the wayfinding, those improvements that were going to be paid for under the HRA, those costs did go up a little bit. Our total at this point is $1.326 million. So we are still about $1 million shy of what we had originally committed to. But obviously, we are looking for the future and looking forward to opportunities to reinvest in the 50th and France District.
Member Swenson.
I don't want to build the ramps. I don't think that makes sense. I don't like the fact that this elevator has gone up so much in expense, and we don't really have a final figure because we don't have the rights to what we need. And it still only puts an elevator on 1 out of 3 ramps. I agree with Member Stewart that there have been some rumblings of things changing around a little bit in buildings up there. We might have another opportunity. I wouldn't be opposed to doing it if we have another opportunity in a place that makes sense. It's my opinion that we should just not put an elevator or ramps in at this time.
Other comments?
All right. Well, there will be other opportunities because the area is ripe for change. We are part of that change with properties that we have acquired on 49th and a half Street. So I guess acknowledging that we have received communication from Alan Ackerberg of Parasoleil and Dick Curtin, Richard Curtin, one of the property owners at 50th and France, saying that the elevator is important to keep 50th and France viable in a competitive retail market. So I do understand that. However, there will be changes happening at 50th and France that would provide a better place. If in fact Lund's were to make a move, I believe it would be the city's intention to have the liquor store follow that move in order to be adjacent to the grocery store. That provides, in my mind, a perfect opportunity to have an elevator that serves France Avenue, that serves 50th, and is an anchor on the corner of the south ramp. So if we, I don't know, that's what just occurs to me sitting here, listening to this discussion. We own that piece of property. And if in fact that happens in 2 years and 5 years, maybe that's what it takes. But the improvements we've made to the parking structures at this point, adding cost to that adds cost to the shops. It increases the rent. So I'm sensitive to that. I understand that the competitive viability of 50th and France is important. I also understand that the shop owners need to have an economic way to run their business. And if our costs increase, which trickle down to higher rents for them, I'm not sure we've done anybody any favors by doing that. So if we wait until the time is right, and we do have some big players making big moves that could provide maybe some of the resources needed to do this, that seems to me to be the right thing to do.
It sounds like we have enough in the way of financial resources to make this work, but I still don't think it's doing it right. It's not doing it the Edina way. So I think we got to wait for that opportunity too, and come back to try this another day. So there's an action requested to reject all bids from the stair elevator and consider an alternative project. I think we could probably deal with the first part of that. Is there a motion to reject all the bids for the stair elevator project?
So moved.
Second.
Got a motion and a second to reject all bids for the stair elevator project in the south ramp at 50th and France.
Mr. Mayor, so
Discussion.
I think this has been good discussion. I think we've arrived at the right place. It's not the right time, but I also am mindful, and I think all of us are, that it's still an accessibility issue, and we want to address that accessibility issue. We just need to find the right opportunity. So I encourage us to continue to work to find that right opportunity. But I think for right now, we're making the right decision.
Agreed. Well said. All right. Any further discussion? All those in favor of the motion as stated say aye.
Aye.
Aye. Opposed say nay. Carried. And Ms. Benner, thank you, gentlemen, and thank you, Mr. Nelson, for participating. Ms. Bennerot has the next matter, which is a discussion of the 2015 Quality of Life Survey and a staff recommendation on how to go about getting that work done this year. Ms. Bennerot, welcome.
Good evening from this part of the council chambers. As you well know, the city conducts a quality of life survey every other year in odd-numbered years. This is the year for us to consider doing the next one. In the past, we have worked with a company called Decision Resources based here in Minneapolis. That company has restructured and is now known as Morris Leatherman. Well, we've been very pleased with the work that they've done for us. This year we explored other alternatives. After careful research and evaluation, tonight we're going to recommend that the city work with another firm, the National Research Center out of Colorado. Let me tell you a little bit about the National Research Center, which I'll refer to as NRC from this point forward. The National Research Center first developed what was called the National Citizen Survey. It was one of the very first scientific surveys to gather resident data. Again, on a wide range of community issues, very similar to our typical quality of life surveys. That tool has been used by more than 350 communities in 48 states. They also develop customized surveys, so that National Citizen Survey tool is just an off-the-shelf. They ask the same questions in every community. Now they are also offering these customizable surveys so that we can ask the questions that we want. Their process includes multiple contacts with the respondents. As with any statistically valid survey, surveys are completed by a representative cross-section of the population. Because of their work across the country, the data that they are able to provide not only provides local benchmark comparisons, but national benchmark comparisons. Data will be made available to us in a variety of formats so that every audience, staff, elected officials, business owners, and residents have the ability to quickly access the information that they want and need. It's also noteworthy that NRC has the only citizen survey that's been endorsed by the ICMA, the International City County Management Association, and the National League of Cities. This chart shows the Minnesota NRC clients. Those listed in green use the National Citizen Survey tool, and those listed in black use the customized surveys. Bloomington, for example, does the National Citizen Survey annually, and the most recent local city to do the customized survey is the city of Eden Prairie. Both companies that I've mentioned tonight, Decision Resources and NRC, offer both mailed surveys and telephone surveys. NRC, however, does recommend that we proceed with a mailed survey. Some of the benefits of a mailed survey are that it's less expensive per survey with a greater participation rate. With a telephone survey, we would contact 400 randomly selected households. With a mailed survey, we'll be contacting 1,500 randomly selected households. Their research shows a higher response rate. At Pew Research, the response rate of a typical telephone survey was 36% in 1997 and just 9% today. NRC expects a response rate of between 25 and 40% for the survey they would do here in Edina. By doing a mailed survey, you eliminate the perception of interviewer bias. We can use visual aids in the survey that we wouldn't be able to offer in a telephone survey. And they have found that older residents are much more comfortable with the mailed survey where they can provide a more thoughtful response. Their approach, if awarded the project, is to first start by putting together that geocoded mailing list. Then they would work with staff and electeds at your discretion to develop a 5-page mailed survey. Again, multiple contacts through the process. The first thing residents who are selected for this survey would receive is a postcard letting them know that they've been selected and that the survey would be forthcoming. Then the survey would be sent in 2 waves. The following week they'd get the survey. The week after that they'd get another copy of the survey. Residents, of course, would have the option to complete the survey online if they would prefer that to handwriting a written response. They do provide a full report with rich data that is more manipulative than we have had from Decision Resources in the past. They would be able to provide an analysis of this year's survey compared to previous surveys, and then provide some benchmark comparisons to other cities here in the metro and across the nation, and provide good cross-tab data. And their proposal does include a presentation to the City Council here in Edina. These are some of the cities, these are cities in Minnesota that are in their benchmarking database. You'll notice that there are some cities, many cities on this list that aren't NRC clients, but they have given them access to their surveying data so that we can compare against them. If approved tonight, this is the schedule of the proposed project. We would let them know tomorrow that the project has been approved. Through the end of April, we would work to develop the surveying tools and mailing materials. After the school district's bond referendum, that's when we would send the mail pre-notification postcard and begin the waves of surveys the following week on May 13th. It's about a 6-week collection period. And then in mid to late June, they would begin analyzing the data and writing their report, sending a draft report to the City Council in mid-July and a final report to the city with a presentation. First, the report coming in late July and a presentation to the City Council in August. Our staff recommendation tonight is that we enter into an agreement with NRC to administer the Quality of Life Survey at a cost of $27,250. With that, do you have any questions about our proposal? That is correct. We had budgeted $30,000 for this project.
Staunton.
One of the questions I have, just how long have we gone with Decision Resources?
We have done 2 surveys with Decision Resources in the past 4 years, and then it had been 10 years previous to that we had done a survey also with Decision Resources.
I know there's the oft-cited 2006, is that the Parks survey or what?
That was not done by Decision Resources.
It's different. So we've done a couple of years in a row. The concern I have that I'd like you to address is just the longitudinal validity. So we want to be able to keep comparing as we go over time. Part of the value is the snapshot, but part is also.
So the reason, a large reason why we have chosen to recommend a customizable survey is so that we can ask those same questions that were asked in 2013 and 2011, so we have that longitudinal comparison. And
is there a concern that shifting from a telephone survey to a mail survey changes that?
They tell me it won't, that we'll just get more and better data. To be honest, the biggest drawback for me personally with the local firm is that the data that we receive is not easily manipulated or reviewed. The crosstab data we get is in hard copy form and sits in bound volumes on my office floor. Scott, would you like to
I was
add to that?
I was just going to offer to Councilmember Staunton. I think one of the concerns is not that it's going to be from a longitudinal standpoint. It's not that it's going to be less accurate because of the sample size. It'll have probably have a smaller margin of error. So in the work that we've done previously, the margin of error was plus or minus 5.
They're still guaranteeing a plus or minus 5.
Okay.
And just to be clear, I'm sure both are accurate. It's just switching to a different. I want to be able to compare them across time, and if you're comfortable, we can do that.
I'm comfortable with it as well, but I think the big step forward though is the idea that we would get to have a database that would be so much easier for us to use. We have the data, but as Ms. Bennerat stated, it's paper form and it's not easy to use.
If any of you have played with the tools available from the Vision Edina survey, I mean, that is very quick and easy to use for anyone. That's the type of thing we would be able to do with this. I'm also very interested in the national benchmarking. It's rare a meeting goes by that someone doesn't compare us to someplace else. Earlier this evening in the work session with Confluence, they were talking about some parks and recreation amenities in other communities around the country. We could look those up, see if that data is available, and dive a little bit deeper.
So we've also been having some discussions on an unrelated level on GIS. Is this the kind of thing that can interface with that when you get data like that?
This proposal does not include, because it's anonymous, we'll only be able to tell what quadrants that the people come out of, but not right down to the household. But yes, we could add that data to a layer at some point.
And allow us to sift it in and out with other data that we gather?
Correct.
Okay.
Member Swenson?
Well, Member Staunton hit one of my primary things. I want at least some of the questions to be the same so that we have some reference to our old ones, because we do talk about there hasn't been a change or there's been an improvement. The other thing, I actually am relieved you're mailing them out, because I was never totally comfortable that I had people that only use cell phones and didn't have landlines with Decision Resources where they said they did cell phones. I just didn't know what percent. And I want to make sure that we really cover our city as a whole, and we have a lot of younger people now that don't have landlines. So I think I am more comfortable with a mailed one.
In all fairness, both companies, again, offer both surveying methods, and both of them have said that they have ways to acquire those cell phone numbers to participate in the survey, but it does seem a little like, well, tell me more about that. Again, to the question about the survey questions, the majority of the questions will be the same from 2011, 2013, and now 2015. There's only a small percentage of questions that change every 2 years. Based on an area of interest you may have.
Yeah, well, one of them might be single garbage collectors or something, whatever it is that we're talking about.
GIS, I don't know.
Or GIS or something, yeah. So.
Okay, good. Other questions? Otherwise, I'd entertain a motion based on the staff recommendation.
So moved.
Second.
Got a motion and a second to hire the firm of National Research Center to do the custom survey for $27,250 for 2015 calendar year. Any further discussion? All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Aye. Opposed say nay. Carried. Next we have Resolution 2015-13, which has various donations to the city that we need to approve as a council. And is there a motion to adopt that resolution?
So moved. Second.
Got a motion and a second to adopt Resolution 2015-13, which accepts various grants and donations to the city. Any further discussion? All those in favor of the resolution, adopting the resolution, say aye.
Aye.
Aye. Opposed, say nay. Carried. This reporting period, Edina Arts Center is a recipient of some particular in-kind matters, elements, I guess is one way to describe them. Large frames, wrapped canvases, art papers. The Edina Police Department also got a grant from the, or a gift from the Crime Prevention Fund. And those donations will be posted on the website. And next, on to a matter which Director Teague has, and that is prospective council appointments to the Southdale France Avenue Area Work Group for the initial phase and for the work schedule. Director Teague.
Thank you, Mayor, members of the council. As you recall, at your last council meeting, we had Planning Commissioners Platter and Schroeder present an outline of a process to develop guiding principles for development in the Southdale area, primarily focusing on that west side of France. At that time, they did ask the council to populate a portion of the working group that would be established to help create those principles. 6 members would be self-selected at the kickoff meeting, which we've scheduled for March 26th. And 2 members have been appointed from the Planning Commission. One is here this evening, Steve Hobbs, and Joanne Olson is the second member from the Planning Commission. So as you recall, they did ask the council to appoint 4 members. That would be a community-wide member, a neighborhood member, a commercial property owner, and one from a community organization. We also have in front of you a schedule on how to accomplish coming up with the final product of the policies at the end. As you see on the schedule, the goal here is to have it wrapped up and before the City Council for consideration those development guidelines on May 19th. So about a 45, 60-day process. The bulk of the meetings would take place in April, again with that kickoff meeting that's scheduled for March 26th.
Good, thank you. Member Stoughton, I think you've given some thought to some of these potential appointments that the council would make, 4 appointments that we would have, at least in the first go-around here. A community-wide member, a neighborhood member, a commercial property owner, and a community organizing member. Do you care to comment on some of your thoughts?
Sure. Just, Mr. Mayor, thank you. And in the interest of trying to kind of toss some ideas out there, as you know, this has been a project near and dear to my heart, as well as everyone else's. But I suggested some names earlier and circulated them. And so I would recommend the following for the community at large position: Michael Schroeder, who has recently left the Planning Commission after serving 9 years on the Planning Commission. He has extensive personal and professional experience in community engagement, and actually, along with Commissioner Hobbs and Commissioner Olson and Chair Platter, was critical in kind of choreographing this process. So I would suggest that he be the community at large person. I'd also suggest that he be appointed by us as a convener of the initial meeting. I'd leave it to the group to decide who would chair themselves once it's up and running, but I think he has enough experience with this to really start the meeting off. For the neighborhood representative, I'd recommend Steve Brown. Steve also is, I think, very uniquely qualified for this situation. He is a very close-by neighbor. He actually lives less than a block from France Avenue on Bristol Circle. He is a former colleague of mine on the Planning Commission, having served 9 years himself on the Planning Commission. He chaired our 70th Street Access Committee back several years ago, and so he's very familiar with community engagement. And in his professional life is in commercial real estate, so I think he brings a wealth of experience and capabilities to that. For the community organization, I would recommend Lori Severson, who's the executive director of the Edina Chamber of Commerce. And she also is, I think, uniquely set to represent both business interests and the community in the process. And I know her a little bit and know her to be very collaborative, and I think would be a great member of the team. I threw out a number of names of possibilities, but didn't have a chance really to talk to anybody directly on the commercial property side. But I know, I think that Member Swenson had a chance to talk with Peter Fitzgerald, and I don't know if you want to elaborate more on Peter, but I think he'd be a great suggestion for that position too.
You know, as we look at this group, I think it's really important also to look at the ages that they represent. And Peter represents for us in Edina a young family, you know, with children, kind of the future of Edina. And, you know, as we talk about other people that we've appointed or are a part of it, they tend to hit a different age demographic. Peter will do a good job on this. He already participated in the Valley View Wooddale work that they did for that small area plan and has grown up in Edina. And so I just think he brings a really good perspective to it and some experience. But, you know, he hasn't served on any board or commission, so he also helps bring that outside view.
And the other suggestion I would, you know, just keep in mind that there are 3 additional commercial property representatives to be appointed in this kickoff meeting. And we have a number of names that, some of which I suggested. I suspect others of you have names in mind. And I would suggest that Peter, who works in the industry, and Lori Severson with the Chamber of Commerce could also work at trying to encourage folks to come to that meeting so that we get a good representation on that side, as well as us encouraging folks, and I'd like to talk about that once we make these appointments, kind of encouraging the neighbors and making sure we're communicating with the neighborhood about making their own appointments too.
Member Staunton, if you're offering that as a motion, I would be happy to second it.
So moved.
All right. We've got a motion and a second with respect to the 4 council appointments to the Southdale France Avenue Area Work Group for this initial phase of work. The nominees are Michael Schroeder for the Community at Large position, Steve Brown for the Neighborhood Representative position, Lori Severson, the Executive Director of the Edina Chamber of Commerce for the Community Organizations seat, and Peter Fitzgerald for the commercial property owner position. These are first round appointments, and as Member Staunton points out, articulately so, there are some other commercial organization members, commercial property members to be appointed. I think some of us have had discussions with property owners in the area that would be excellent choices, but on the first go-around, this is a very good slate.
And I believe that included appointing Michael Schroeder as the convener.
Good point. Thank you for that catch. Yeah, and Michael Schroeder, not only the community at large position, but also the convener of the group. Further discussion or comment with regard to these potential appointees from the council?
I know there are many talented, qualified people in the community, many also willing to devote their time to this, and but these 4 I think are extraordinary. I think it's a great slate. So good. Endorse it.
Well said. Anyone else?
No.
All right. All those in favor of the appointment as recommended, say aye.
Aye.
Aye. Opposed, say nay. Carried. We.
Mr. Mayor, can I briefly follow up? So the other thing that I think is really important, because this is I appreciate the urgency. I think it's important that we move forward on this, but it is coming up quickly. And so I think it's very important that we reach out to folks and make sure they're aware of the calendar, both for potential commercial property representatives, but as well for neighborhood representatives at that kickoff meeting. I think the neighborhood has done a nice job of communicating among themselves, but there's going to be folks who may not be in whatever email chain. So I'm interested in hearing from staff a little bit about ideas.
And the kickoff meeting is
forward.
Thursday the 26th, right?
Exactly.
Yep. Thank you.
So I don't know, Carrie, if you have suggestions for outreach, or if Bill Noondorf might, or Manager Neal might.
We have been working with communications staff. I believe a press release has gone out where we've got it lined up to be posted on the website as soon as possible. I think that's going to be happening tonight. And then the usual City Extra, all the social media tools that we use.
And that neighborhood does have a neighborhood association now. Is that correct? Are they recognized?
I'm not
Did
sure
they not
they-
get
I'm not sure they
recognized yet,
do.
or were they just working on it? Sorry, I don't remember.
Well, if they do have one, we should use that mechanism for communication as well. Jordan?
And we've had a number of folks from the neighborhood who've participated in public hearings and the like, and to the extent we have contact information, I think we should utilize that to communicate with folks and make sure they're aware of this, and we can get as many people to the meeting as possible.
Yeah, I do have several email contacts from the project that went on. I can reach out to those
That'd be
folks.
great.
Good.
So I'm excited about the process. I think this is going to be a good group of people. I look forward to seeing who gets appointed at the initial kickoff meeting and how the group gets going. Thank you, Mr. Mayor.
All right, thank you. Thank you for those follow-up comments. All right, on to the correspondence petitions section of the agenda. Numerous items in that portion of the agenda. Anything else other than what's been provided previously? Manager Neal? All right. Aviation noise update. We've all got one, probably. Manager Neal, do you want to lead that off?
My update would be the same as yours. The content of the noise annual legislative summit, I'll defer to someone else if they'd like to talk more about that.
Well, we also
Member Swenson,
we
you're
have a
a
number
member?
of things. So the five of us attended a number of meetings in Washington, D.C. One of them was with a group that is called Noise, that advocates for communication with the FAA and has different platforms that they support based on airport noise. Every airport's a little different, so our issues are different than other airports. But the most important thing I think we did is that we had, in some cases, multiple visits with our state legislators. We met directly with Senator Klobuchar and then met her at a couple other events and talked to her and talked about airport noise along with some other issues that are relevant to Edina. And then met with Franken's chief of staff and who does all the transportation and airport information, and the new one, his new chief of staff, Matt, who's taking over. We also talked with Senator Franken at a number of events and were able to convey our feelings about noise, and they've been hearing from our residents. Unfortunately, Representative Paulson and Ellison were in town with their residents, but we talked to both of their chief of staffs, and there is definitely more phone calls coming into them, and I think that is the most important thing for our residents, because that's what gets our representatives' ear, and then they start doing their due diligence about what's coming up, like the refunding of the FAA this fall, and some things that are very important. Tomorrow is a NOC meeting, so Noise Oversight Committee. It is at Richfield. It starts at 1:30. So I'll be there for that. And we continue to work also with Fair Skies. There is a new letter from a group that is called Quiet Skies, and I know that Representative Ellison has signed on to that. So if anyone is contacting Representative Paulson, it would be really good that this be across the line on both sides of the political spectrum, that we get signatures. So it would be great if Paulson signed on to Quiet Skies. It's really just asking for more input from residents and more oversight of what happens for residents. We did learn while we were out there that a month ago Phoenix had RNAV put in for takeoffs, and they hadn't gotten a lot of public input, and there wasn't a lot of information out ahead of time. So Mary, you heard them describe it as the first morning as if something, well, how did you phrase that? Military operation. It sounded like a military operation going over their homes. The trouble was it was never going to end. So we're continuing to work on this. I guess that's our update. Do you have anything to add?
Yeah, the only thing I would add is that I think when we first became engaged in the aviation noise issue, and were successful in convincing the FAA that this market wasn't ready for that change, that we were very upfront, and they were very upfront with us to say they will be back. We know they're going to be back at some point. And at this conference, we got the first kind of preview about when that might be, and it looks like it might be in the latter half of 2017. So.
Yeah. We did hear 2017.
Yeah, so I think from that standpoint, we've got a bit of we can take a bit of a head start to get ready for that and to continue to get ready for it.
Yeah. And have a discussion about what is best, maybe in the long run, for all of our residents as a shared noise. We did find out another interesting thing, actually, that NextGen, which is the company that developed the program that allows GPS tracking and being able to fly on a GPS track for planes. When they first designed NextGen, they didn't do it with the idea that planes would be on like highways in the sky. They were looking at a better way to fly in and out of airports that could be safer and save fuel and everything. They actually never anticipated the direction the FAA would take it in, just designating a limited number of highways in the sky. So that was actually one of the most interesting things I learned.
Good. All right. Mayor and council comments. Member Staunton.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. I echo the comments about the National League of Cities Conference. It was very valuable for me, especially as a new council member. Lots of great opportunities to hear about what other cities who are similarly situated to us are doing, wrestling with lots of issues that are similar to ours. So I appreciated the opportunity to be part of that, and I thought it was very valuable. A couple of items I wanted to catch up on. One, as you know, I am the council's representative on the Community Education Services Board, and I attended a meeting last week of the CESB. And that organization, which kind of is advisory to the community education folks, is like the rest of the Edina School District going through a strategic planning process, trying to kind of coordinate all of the things we do in our community with education from birth to age 85 and beyond. And so there's an entire kind of rethinking about that process going on, and it's I'm coming in a little bit in the middle of the conversation, but I think it's an exciting and interesting process. I'm learning a lot about it, and I think it's creating some interesting ideas for me on ways we can collaborate. You know, we're in the middle of a process of imagining the future of the Grandview area, and the school district is in the middle of a process of seeking approval of a referendum, and that may make some changes in community service, and we may be able to do some things together that will make some sense. So I'm looking forward to those collaboration opportunities. On the school district, staying on the school district theme for a minute, we did have at our meeting earlier tonight at our work session, had a chance to have a work session with members of the school board and the school board, school district staff. And we had a good exchange of discussion and ideas. The district was giving us an overview on their proposed referendum. And it was one of the topics we talked about is a topic that we as council members have been hearing a lot about in correspondence. We've been getting emails and letters from folks who live in our community but aren't in the school district. And I think many of us, if not all of us, are of the opinion that if your family lives in Edina, you ought to be able to figure out a way to send your kids to the Edina schools if you'd like to. And they have been encouraging us on the city council to allow them to open enroll into the Edina school district. And the unfortunate part is we have no control over that. That is the school district's job. The good news is that we heard from the school district tonight, as we met with them, that they are in the middle of a process of considering that. And that process, it sounds like, is going to unfold this spring and summer. And so I look forward to how they wrestle with that issue and engage that community and resolve that issue. So those were the two big issues that I wanted to talk about, as well as the National League of Cities. Thank you, Mr. Mayor.
Good. Thank you. Member Swenson.
Well, I would like to congratulate our mayor because he has been made the chair of the TAB, which is the Transportation Advisory Board to the Met Council. And that's a great position, and we're really proud of him. And he's worked really hard with the TAB over the years, and he will make a fine chair. So, Mayor, congratulations.
Thank you.
And then I'd also like to congratulate the Girls White Mites for winning the Jamboree in Victoria, i.e. Grace Starr, my granddaughter. I'm done.
All right. Member Brindle.
I think I just have one thing, and that is regarding our trip to Washington, D.C. It was informative. It was packed with appointments. It was busy. And just a shout out and thank you to Manager Neal and to City Manager Fellows Lindy Crawford for all their work in coordinating that schedule for us and making that possible. Very well organized. Everything went off without a hitch, and we all made our plane.
Almost everything.
Was your luggage late?
No, that's okay. We had to run through the airport.
We did. There was the last day on Wednesday. We had Senator Klobuchar attend a reception that was hosted by Minnesota League of Cities, and she came promptly. And then Senator Franken came when he could, which was a little later, which by the time he was done was a little too late for us to be leaving for the airport. But we did make it. And it was touch and go. I was the first one. So I knew I was going to get on the airplane, although when I got to the gate, it said Omaha, Nebraska, leaving at 11:59, and we were Minneapolis, St. Paul, leaving at 11:45. So we're getting there painfully close to 11:45. And I said, the airplane to Minneapolis, and she said, it's right there. So out I went. So I was very happy to see my partners coming after me. So we were all on the airplane. So thank you, and thank you to Karen Kurt and the rest of city staff for keeping things running here smoothly while we were out there.
Thank you. Member Stewart.
I just want to quickly amend what Member Staunton said. For the 2015-2016 school year, open enrollment is done. They've already locked that in. So any of the changes that they're considering won't take effect until the 2016-2017 school year. So just to make sure people understand that. I had a chance to attend a meeting of the 50th and France Business Association. I was glad to get to know some of the important merchants in our 50th and France area. That was really good group to talk to. I also had a chance to visit in Minneapolis Nicollet Square, which is a low-income housing facility that's up and running and promoted by Beacon, the same group that is working on the 66 West project here in Edina. So it was good to have that tour. Also, the National League of Cities conference, I thought very good for us to keep abreast of the state of the art in city government, and that was good. But I think even more valuable is the visits with our representatives in Washington to have a chance to talk about those issues that are important to Edina. I also want to give a little shout out here. Troop 123. I used to be a leader in that Boy Scout troop, and I want to give a shout out to Noah Sawatsky, Will Merriam, Justin Douglas, and Eric Danielson, all of whom were made Eagle Scouts last Sunday. So congratulations to those young men. The school referendum is another issue that we talked about and heard about with the school board today. I do want to make sure people are aware that there are going to be 3 different sessions where the school representatives are going to talk about the upcoming referendum and the reasons for it, and give a chance to the public to ask questions and have things explained. Those 3 sessions all at 7 o'clock in the evening. The first coming up this Thursday, March 19th at Creek Valley School. The second on April the 7th, which is a Tuesday, at the Edina Community Center, room 349. And the third on Monday, the 20th of April, it's right here in this chamber. So please, if you have questions about that, think about attending those. If you ask those of us on City Council about the referendum, our answer will be, we don't know. It's not our deal. Also, in a similar vein, on Sunday, March 22nd at 5:30, there's going to be an open house regarding the Grandview redevelopment, and we would very much welcome input from everybody in the community on that. So, as was said earlier, please, if you have the inclination, do contact your representatives in Washington about the air traffic noise issues. Thank you.
Thank you. Over the past couple of weeks, of course, my colleagues have mentioned the National League of Cities meeting, and I want to thank all my colleagues for helping me out while we were out there, and appreciate that. The day after our last council meeting on the 3rd of March, we had an MLC board meeting up in Plymouth that Manager Neal and I attended. And then the following day, I attended a Metro Mayor's Roundtable on Regional Energy and Climate Resilience at the University of Minnesota Law School. Quite a few mayors there from across the region, and the purpose of the gathering was to see whether there was an appetite from a regional standpoint to discuss on an ongoing basis sustainability with respect to energy use and also with the planet itself, I think, in terms of making sure that we have a planet that is good for hundreds and hundreds of years to come here. So that was an interesting meeting to participate in. Connecting with Kids Breakfast was on the 6th of March. Chris Marshall did a great job putting that together and running that. A couple hundred folks there at Edina Country Club for the Connecting with Kids Breakfast. A lot of great young people honored there, including a couple of young guys that worked with Bob Stewart's daughter on forming an organization that tutors kids in both SAT and ACT matters, and now they've expanded their operation, I think, to 8 schools. And so that was impressive. Congratulations to your daughter for that.
She's a dynamo.
Yep. And then, let's see, coming up tomorrow, first TAB meeting that I will chair is tomorrow afternoon. And then on Friday is a partner advisory meeting for Greater MSP, and I sit as a partner on that advisory group, so I'll be attending that as well. Manager Neal, your calendar pre and post the meeting tonight.
Thank you, Your Honor. The one item that's listed on mine is a stray item, so but I do want to also appreciate the National League of Cities conference. It was a particularly good conference this year, and one of the sessions that I attended was about utility lines and how the city of Columbus, Ohio has really taken on the issue of inflow and infiltration and their program for replacing not just the public side but also the private side of utility lines. And as you've heard from our city engineer, Mr. Milner, that is a big source of inflow and infiltration into the public system. So there are some cities out there doing some unique things with that challenge, because it's a tough one. And that's all I have for you tonight.
Right. Good. Thank you. If there's nothing further from any council members, we'll adjourn and then reconvene as the Edina Housing and Redevelopment Authority. All right. Hearing nothing, council meeting stands adjourned. Calling to order the Edina Housing and Redevelopment Authority meeting for March 17, 2015. Roll call, please, Ms. Benarott.
Commissioner Staunton?
Here.
Commissioner Stewart?
Here.
Commissioner Swenson?
Here.
Commissioner Brundle?
Here.
Chair Hovland?
Here. We have a meeting agenda in front of us. Is there a motion to approve
So
the
moved.
form of meeting agenda?
Second.
Got a motion and a second on the meeting agenda form. Discussion. All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Aye. Opposed say nay. Carried. We've got some minutes from February 17, 2015
So
that
moved.
need approval.
Second.
Got a motion and a second on that. Any further discussion? All those in favor of approving the minutes of February 17, 2015 for the HRA, say aye.
Aye.
Aye. Opposed, say nay. Carried. And then we have a companion matter for the HRA, and that is the rejection of bids for the stair elevator tower at the 50th and France Business District, the south ramp. Is there a motion to reject all the bids for the stair elevator tower at the 50th and France Business District South Ramp? Got a motion and a second.
Can't hear the presentation again?
No.
You
can't.
are a public policy
Just a
wonk.
couple of things I wanted to drill into.
All right. Any further comment?
No.
All right. All those in favor say aye. Aye. Opposed say nay. Carried. Any further business for the HRA?
No.
HRA stands adjourned. We're
Thank
done
you
for the
for
evening.
staying, gentlemen.
Thank you.